Good evening. If I could have everyone's attention, please, we'll call the meeting to order. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening and thank you. Welcome to the May 11th, 2026 business meeting of the Milford Board of Education. You'll have to give us some grace tonight. We're not used to being in this fancy space, so if there's any faux pas or technical challenges, we'll address. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Megan Doyle.
Here.
Jennifer Brown.
Here.
Mary Claire Edmonds.
Here.
Nicole Flowers.
Here.
Tom Koba.
Here.
Adam Scobie.
Mr. Scobie will be late.
Okay. Hannah Tedros.
Here.
Nicole Wilhelm.
Here.
Cindy Wolf-Boyton.
Ms. Wolf-Boyton is excused.
Okay. And Susan Glennon.
Here.
We have 8 members present.
Thank you. So the first order of business tonight is student recognition for the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education Student Leadership Awards. I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Kutaya for that presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. And thank you, members of the Board of Education. It's a very special evening each May of the school year where we get to shine a light on some of our incredible students. And when I speak with principals about selecting students for this specific award, always they're saying, but I can only choose 1 or 2, really? But I have so many who are so worthy of recognition in the area of leadership and service to the greater school community. So please know that these are some bright shining lights before you and students that really represent what we want to see in every single child. I'm so very proud of the team that works with our students. Congratulations to the teachers and administrators of each school, of the students that are going to be recognized this evening, and congratulations to all the parents and families as well. So the way we'll do this, board members, is to ask the child to come up and stand by me. I'll say a few great words to celebrate that young person, and then I'll hand them a certificate. And if it will be the pleasure of the board, if that individual could come and shake your hand, okay? Thank you. So let's start with Sophia Plonsky from East Shore Middle School. So Sophia exemplifies leadership through both her actions and her awareness of others. A confident and engaged member of the school community, she consistently rises to the occasion, whether in the classroom or on stage. Her ability to take initiative and adapt to any group setting highlights her strong sense of responsibility and her willingness to take on challenges. In the classroom, Sophia naturally steps into leadership roles. Regardless of the subject or the peers she's working with, teachers note her maturity and her ability to read the needs of those around her. She is especially thoughtful in ensuring that all students feel included, often going out of her way to support classmates who may not advocate for themselves. Beyond the classroom, Sophia demonstrates dedication and commitment through her extracurricular involvement. She's been an active member of the drama club since 6th grade and participates in the music jam club where she plays the guitar. Her willingness to commit to these programs over multiple years reflects both her passion and her reliability. In athletics, she earned the MVP award for her recreational basketball team in 7th grade, an accomplishment that speaks to her determination, teamwork, and ability to make decisions under pressure. Additionally, as a member of the student leadership program, she further demonstrates her ability to understand issues clearly, collaborate with peers, and follow through on commitments. She is responsible for leading team building activities with peers and shows great maturity in facilitating them. In the future, Sophia is motivated to continue achieving strong academic success, improving her basketball skills, and pursuing her goal of being part of a band. With her strong work ethic, empathy, and dedication to both personal and community growth, I am sure you see why she is the perfect Connecticut Association of Boards of Education Student Award winner. Congratulations, Sophia.
Thank you.
Way to go. Yes, thank you. I would like to invite from East Shore Middle School, Jordan Kanhai Schuld. Throughout his middle school years, Jordan consistently demonstrated a strong commitment to personal growth and to the well-being of others. This is reflected in his academic success, earning honors with distinction every quarter, as well as being recognized with the Respect Star Award in both 6th and 7th grades. A natural leader, Jordan approaches challenges with confidence and integrity. He's willing to take on difficult situations and engage in meaningful conversations, often serving as a positive influence among peers. As an active member of student leadership team, he contributes to building a supportive school community, showing both initiative and a deep sense of responsibility. His ability to listen, collaborate, and respond thoughtfully demonstrates maturity beyond his years. In addition to his leadership roles, Jordan is committed to his interests and passion. He has participated in chess club for the past 2 years and drama club for 3, showing dedication and the ability to work effectively with others toward a common goal. Whether collaborating on a stage set or strategizing in competition, he consistently honors his commitments and contributes positively to the group's effort. Teachers describe Jordan as kind to all students, a positive and active group member, and someone who genuinely cares about others. He approaches decisions with fairness and empathy, demonstrating strong judgment and diplomacy in a variety of situations. Looking ahead, Jordan aspires to continue growing academically, becoming an even better person, and helping others whenever possible. With the strong values, leadership skills, and commitment to making a difference, I'm sure you could see how he is well deserving of this great award. Congratulations, Jordan. From Harborside Middle School, I invite Violet Lard to join me here, please. Violet exemplifies outstanding leadership through her consistent willingness to step forward and support others in meaningful ways. Whether she is assisting with unified sports, helping operate the school snack cart, or working directly with students with special needs, Violet demonstrates a deep commitment to inclusion and service. She does not hesitate to take on challenges and approaches each responsibility with maturity, reliability, and a strong sense of purpose. Violet's ability to work collaboratively with peers and staff is one of her greatest strengths. She shows genuine concern for others, ensuring that every student feels valued and supported. Her thoughtful and respectful approach allows her to navigate situations with diplomacy while maintaining a positive and welcoming environment. Violet has a clear understanding of the needs around her and consistently responds with empathy and care. In addition to her compassion, Violet is dependable and committed to following through on her responsibilities. She honors every commitment she makes and can be trusted to handle tasks with integrity. Her strong decision-making skills and willingness to step up when needed make her a natural leader within the school community. Violet represents the very best of what this award seeks to recognize. Congratulations, Violet.
Thank you.
From Harborside Middle School again, may I ask Nathan Peters to join me? Nathan is an exemplary student who consistently demonstrates a strong commitment to his academics and personal growth. He approaches his schoolwork with focus, responsibility, and a genuine desire to do his best. Nathan is not only dedicated to achieving success in the classroom, but he also shows a willingness to take on challenges and push himself to improve. His positive attitude and strong work ethic set a great example for his peers. Beyond his academic efforts, Nathan is known for his willingness to help others both in and out of school. He works well with classmates, offering support and encouragement whenever it is needed. Nathan shows respect, kindness, and encouragement in all of his interactions, making him someone others can rely on. His ability to collaborate and contribute positively to group efforts highlights his strong character and sense of responsibility. Outside of school, Nathan continues to demonstrate the same level of commitment and integrity. He is a dependable and caring individual who contributes to his community and supports those around him. Whether helping family, friends, or neighbors, Nathan consistently shows that he can be trusted to follow through on his commitments. His character, work ethic, and dedication make him truly deserving of this recognition. Congratulations, Nathan. From West Shore Middle School, I invite Shadvik Ramkumar to join me. Congratulations. Shadvik shows a strong willingness to take on challenges, approaching every opportunity with enthusiasm and determination. Academically, he excels with math as his favorite subject and has earned honors with distinction every marking period during his time at West Shore Middle School. As a member of our enrichment program, he consistently pushes himself to think critically and grow as a learner. His ability to make thoughtful and sometimes difficult decisions reflects a maturity well beyond his years, as he carefully considers the impact of his choices on others. A defining strength of Shadvik's leadership is his genuine concern for other people. As a student council member and a wingman student leader, he actively works to create a positive school climate by teaching his peers the importance of kindness, inclusion, and respect. He is a supportive and empathetic presence, always willing to listen, encourage, and lead by example. His ability to work collaboratively makes him a valued member of any group, and he respects diverse perspectives and contributes meaningfully to shared goals. Shadvik demonstrates a deep commitment to the responsibility he takes on. He consistently follows through, honoring his commitments with integrity and reliability. His diplomacy and respectful communication skills allow him to navigate challenges thoughtfully and resolve conflicts in a constructive manner. Outside of school, Shadvik continues to exemplify leadership and service. He's an active participant in basketball, soccer, and volleyball, demonstrating teamwork and dedication. As a member of the Milford Youth Council, he contributes his voice to initiatives that support his community. He also gives back through service, including donating canned goods to the Purple Pantry food program. Additionally, Shadvik is involved in the Kamban Community Center, where he works alongside his family to promote and preserve the Tamil language and culture. This is an effort that reflects both pride in his heritage and a commitment to community engagement. So you see, Shadvik exemplifies the leadership qualities celebrated by the CABE Award. Congratulations, Shadvik. Again from West Shore Middle, can I ask Gianna Morant to join me? Gianna has maintained an outstanding academic record, earning honors with distinction every marking period during her time at West Shore Middle. With a strong passion for learning, particularly in science, she approaches her studies with curiosity, focus, and determination. Her willingness to challenge herself academically reflects both her work ethic and her commitment to excellence. Throughout her middle school career, Gianna has been an active and impactful member of the Student Council in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. In this role, she has taken on meaningful leadership responsibilities, helping to plan and organize spirit days, fundraisers, and school dances that bring the community together. Her willingness to take on challenges and her ability to commit to projects from start to finish have made her a dependable and respected leader among peers. Gianna also serves as a student sidekick leader, where she works closely with fellow students to promote the importance of kindness, respect, and inclusion. Through this role, she demonstrates a strong concern for others and an ability to connect with peers in a meaningful way. She leads by example, showing empathy, positivity, and a genuine desire to make school a better place for everyone. Her ability to work with others is evident in all that she does. Gianna collaborates effectively, communicates respectfully, and approaches challenges with maturity and diplomacy. Outside of school, Gianna continues to exemplify leadership and dedication. She is a talented gymnast, demonstrating discipline, perseverance, and commitment to her craft. She also takes on responsibility by babysitting, showing trustworthiness and maturity. Additionally, Gianna has given back to her community by assisting with the Food to Kids program, further highlighting her compassion and desire to help others. Gianna embodies the leadership qualities celebrated by this award, so please help me in congratulating her. From Jonathan Law High School, I invite David Gary to join me. They get taller. David is a dedicated and resilient student leader at Jonathan Law High School, who exemplifies a strong willingness to take on challenges and a deep commitment to personal growth. Serving as Vice President of the Model UN, Vice President of FBLA, Class of 2026 Vice President, and Co-Treasurer of Keep Club, David has demonstrated the ability to make difficult decisions, manage responsibilities effectively, and follow through on every commitment with integrity. Known for his outgoing and collaborative nature, David works exceptionally well with others, fostering teamwork and encouraging diverse perspectives. As a captain of the varsity track and field team, he leads by example, supporting teammates, promoting sportsmanship, and building a positive team environment. His involvement in the School Safety and Climate Committee and Social Health Committee reflects his ability to understand complex issues clearly and approach them with diplomacy and care for others. David's leadership extends beyond school through his extensive volunteer work with the Key Club and the FSBC of Bridgeport Youth Association, where he actively serves his community and demonstrates genuine concern for those in need. His perseverance through academic challenges further highlights his determination, adaptability, and strength of character. As a first-generation student, David brings a strong sense of responsibility, cultural pride, and work ethic to everything he does. His ability to connect with others, honor commitments, and lead with empathy makes him a reliable and impactful leader. Congratulations, David. Again from Jonathan Law High School, I invite Kayla Markowitz to join me. Kayla is an accomplished and compassionate leader at Jonathan Law High School, known for her initiative, resilience, and dedication to serving others. Kayla excels in a rigorous academic program while balancing an extraordinary range of leadership roles. As president of Key Club, she has organized impactful service initiatives, including fundraising events supporting organizations such as Camp Sunshine, while inspiring peers to engage in meaningful community work. Demonstrating both courage and vision, she founded the Jewish Student Union to foster inclusivity and connection among students of diverse backgrounds. Kayla's leadership extends across athletics and academics. As captain of both the girls' swim and dive and tennis teams, she leads with integrity, commitment, and a strong sense of teamwork. As editor-in-chief of The Advocate, she manages daily operations and upholds high standards in student journalism. She further contributes her voice as a representative on school climate and social-emotional learning committees, thoughtfully collaborating with peers and administrators to strengthen her school community. Whether mentoring teammates, leading initiatives, or serving her community, Kayla consistently demonstrates a genuine concern for others and an exceptional ability to work collaboratively, leaving a lasting and positive impact in every space she enters. Congratulations, Kayla. And finally, with Joseph A. Foreign High School, a student who can't be with us this evening but should be recognized at this ceremony is Shay Pangu. So let's hear it for her. Finally, a name and face you all know, from Joseph A. Foreign High School, Joseph Kersner. Joey is a dedicated and well-rounded student who stands out for his strong work ethic and genuine commitment to everything he takes on. He challenges himself with a demanding schedule of advanced placement and honor courses while balancing life as a two-sport varsity athlete in hockey and golf, serving as captain of both teams. Joey's leadership is rooted in his willingness to take on challenges and follow through with hard work and determination. His work in sports broadcasting highlights both his initiative and confidence. As a play-by-play commentator for MGAT Television and a guest commentator on WFSB Channel 3's Game of the Week, Joey demonstrates the ability to think on his feet, communicate clearly, and make sound decisions in the moment, qualities that reflect his maturity and composure. At Foreign, Joey is known as a respectful and dependable leader who works well with others. He serves as an officer of the National Honor Society and is a member of the Quill and Scroll Journalism Honor Society, Rho Kappa Social Studies Honor Society, and the French Honor Society. He's also an active member of the Key Club and Natural Helpers, consistently demonstrating commitment to service and a willingness to support those around him. Whether working with peers or contributing to school activities, Joey brings a positive attitude and a strong sense of responsibility. His role as a school news anchor and announcer for Little League Championship games further reflects his skill and dedication. Joey's impact is just as strong in athletics, where he has been recognized as most valuable player in golf and most improved player in hockey. These honors speak to his dedication, persistence, and the way he supports his teammates. Joey carries himself with integrity, balances his many commitments well, and approaches each opportunity with purpose. He will continue his education at Syracuse University's Newhouse School of Public Communications, where he plans to pursue his passion for sports journalism. Congratulations, Joey.
Thank you.
Congratulations to all of the student awardees, and certainly for those here with your family, if you'd like to head out, you're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting, but if you so desire, you can head home and celebrate your children. There we go. All right, so the next item on the agenda is our student reports. We have, I think, Jonathan Law goes first tonight. This is your last meeting.
Yes, thank you, board members. It's a pleasure to be with you all one last time. Today we have two special guests shadowing for next year, Sam Matiste and Mario Castro. Firstly, the Senior Sports Award Banquet is taking place tomorrow, May 12th at Grassy Hill. The All-School Awards Night is the following evening, May 13th. What I'm sure the seniors are most excited for after a long couple weeks of APs is Senior Prom, which is this Saturday, May 16th at Anthony's Ocean View. This year's honors breakfast is May 20th. Also that day is the Senior Scholarship Night. The senior class trip to Six Flags is May 28th. That's also the day us seniors will come together and watch the senior video recapping our enjoyable 4 years at law. Graduation is June 17th, following the end of internships, which is June 5th. Seniors doing internships are expected to create a presentation recapping what they learned. Congratulations to the valedictorian this year, Sia Patil, and the salutatorian, Fiorella Gargiulo. In the science department, members of the Science Club competed in the State Science Olympiad on Saturday, April 25th at UConn. The A team placed 19th and the B team placed 12th overall out of 46 teams. Congratulations to our medal winners. 4th place in Codebusters, Janelle, Ani, and Rithvik. 3rd place in electric vehicle, Liam Snow and Rish Vonsai. 3rd place in forensics, Fiorella and Onik. Here are some other notable scores in the top 10. From A team, Bungie, 7th place, Kayla Markowitz and Billy Soda. Chem Lab, 9th place, Aeon Ahmed and Billy Soda. Robot Tour, 10th place, Kayla Markowitz and Harshi Kothapalli. From B team, Experimental Design, 9th place, Sia Patil and Rish Kadori. Forensics, 8th place, Sia Patil and Justin. Helicopter, 8th place, Kanish and Surya. Hovercraft, 6th place, Mackenzie Forte and Rish Kadori. Robot Tour, 7th place, Ziad and Liam. Water Quality, 5th place, Sia Patil and Janelle Damaya. Students in astronomy traveled to Foran's Planetarium on April 22nd with their teacher, Sarah Spicer. Students were treated to a lesson on the planets of our solar system, the science of nebulae, and our nearest galaxy, Andromeda, by Foran's astronomy teacher and planetarium manager, Laura Donovan. Members of the National Science Honor Society hosted a showcase in advisor Melissa Doolin's classroom on April 21st. The showcase displayed students' passion project scientific posters and was open to staff, students, and parents. After teaching at Jonathan Law High School for 32 years and 38 overall, Christine Bouchard is retiring from science teaching. Over her tenure at Law, she taught AP/UConn ECE Environmental Science, Biology, Chemistry, Physics, Pharmaceutical Chemistry, Meteorology, Medical Mysteries, and Astronomy. She served as department chair for 26 years with a short period of 3 years as curriculum coordinator. She would like to thank the board and the administrators at Central Office for their continuous support for science education. She will greatly miss the collegiality, the students, and the district as a whole. In the English department, AP Lit and AP Lang classes are finishing their exams. AP Lang students, along with other juniors in English 3, will be working on their college essays in the coming weeks. English 1 students are deep into their poetry units, reading and reenacting Romeo and Juliet while also writing their own poetry. Broadcast journalism is working hard on the senior video, and our journalism students have been compiling student messages to teachers during Teacher Appreciation Week, in addition to other work they are doing for the Advocate. The English department is excited to work with standard progressions over the summer for their core classes, and they are even more excited to write the curricula for 2 new electives, true crime narrative and modern contemporary fiction. The math department has been busy collaborating on creating final exams, creating lessons for their final units, and interviewing for some open math positions next year. The music department has finished up their spring concerts this past week. The choir, band, and orchestra all had successful performances. They will be closing out the year with a trip to Six Flags on May 29th. The art department has their art show that you can see in the halls of Parsons. The students and teachers have been working extremely hard to present their work to the community.
Hello everyone, it's great to be with you one last time. In the World Language Department, students in both Spanish and French classes participated in school-wide music brackets. These activities expose students to a wide range of artists from across the Spanish and French-speaking worlds. Students in Spanish and French recently completed the assessment of performance towards proficiency in languages, while Latin students completed the Latin interpretive reading assessment. Students in Spanish 4 have just begun the mini-novel Los Ojos de Carmen, helping students build both comprehension and confidence reading in Spanish. The Special Education Department teamed up with Forens to host a unified prom. The TLC is winding down book checkout, but books are still available until the end of May. 822 books have been checked out so far this year. The mystery game in the TLC is completed. Students solved weekly puzzles to see which teacher stole a valuable manuscript from the library. Every student who completed all 4 weeks received a small prize, and 1 student was randomly selected to win a gift card. 2 new languages were added to the TLC, Turkish and Urdu. There are now books available in 11 different languages to meet the needs of the Milford population. There are 48 books available in these other languages. Each year, more titles and languages are added. In athletics, our student athletes continue to demonstrate outstanding dedication, sportsmanship, and school spirit both on and off the field. Coaches have praised the hard work and commitment by showing our athletes throughout the season, and effort has translated into strong performances across many of our teams. The following teams have qualified for their respective state tournaments. Softball, girls tennis, boys tennis, and earlier today our baseball team qualified with an 11-1 win over Brantford. Many individual athletes for boys and girls track have qualified for both SECs and states. As of May 1st, seniors attending 2- and 4-year colleges and universities next fall have committed to their school of choice. 317 students are completing a total of 599 advanced placement exams over the first 3 weeks of May. Approximately 42% of the Jonathan Law student population is taking at least 1 AP exam. With this being the last meeting, we thank you all for listening and the opportunity to gain this key public speaking opportunity. Thank you all for your time.
Good evening, everyone. It is great to see you all for one final time as we are getting closer to graduation. Unfortunately, Shay has a lacrosse game tonight, but she sends her best wishes. On May 1st, Senior Decision Day was held in the courtyard where students gathered to celebrate their plans after high school. Today, May 11th, marked the start of senior internships. Seniors are going to be at a location for the next few weeks in a field of choice to gain experience. Foreign band, choir, and orchestra hoisted their spring concert. It was a night full of great music. Congratulations to Tau Pham and Max Vicarelli, who were named the valedictorian and the salutatorian of the class of 2026. Congratulations to our Teacher of the Year and District Teacher of the Year, Mr. Austin Caesar. We thank him for his hard work and dedication that he brings to Foreign High. Congratulations to our Paraprofessional of the Year, Ms. Jody Bork, Her commitment to Foreign High School defines her success, as she's involved in Unified Sports and the Forever Friends Club. And a congratulations to our Foreign Parent of the Year, Mrs. Sandy Lund. She has done so much for our school, whether it was hosting late-night pasta parties for wrestling or banquets, she was always there to help out and do her part. Foreign Latin students took first place for the first time in the chariot race at the Connecticut State Latin and Greek Day. The entire trip was an amazing experience for students. In academics, marine science took a field trip to the Maritime Aquarium, where they got an inside look to learn about the enrichment of different animals in the sea. In senior health and safety, seniors demonstrated how blood circulates through the body and what blood flow looks like through CPR. Students in the If You Love It, Teach It course attended East Shore Middle School and were able to get in-classroom experience. They enjoyed hearing from the middle schoolers about how they enjoy class and gave the students a new perspective on how the classroom works. Journalism editors are working hard to produce the Senior Class of 2026 magazine. The magazine will include parent and faculty farewells, senior bequests to underclassmen, pictures to memorize the moments of high school, and a map to show where the seniors are going after they leave Foreign. AP Research students presented the research project they engaged in throughout the year, synthesizing multiple perspectives on this topic, gathering and evaluating data, and using knowledge regarding their topic to update their projects accordingly. In athletics, Chloe Wardman and Gavin Conti are our 2026 CAS-CIAC Scholar Athletes, where they had the honor of attending the banquet, and we are so proud of them. Foreign softball's varsity pitcher, Abby Corris, broke the school record previously held by Jessica Harkness of 817 strikeouts. This is a huge accomplishment she gained in our game against Amity, and a huge congratulations to Abby. Foreign Esports has had an exceptional spring season, competing across 6 different game titles and earning 5 playoff appearances in total, 2 of which were CIAC state playoff appearances. The team also attended multiple in-person tournaments this season, including earning 2nd and 3rd place finishes at the Post-University Super Smash Bros. Tournament. One of the program's biggest accomplishments was the Rocket League team advancing to the CIAC semifinals at Quinnipiac University on April 30th. The team ultimately secured a 3rd place finish in the state for the 2nd consecutive season, further establishing Foreign as one of the most competitive Rocket League teams in the state of Connecticut. On Monday, May 18th, seniors will be receiving awards as well as scholarships to celebrate their achievements that were made at Foreign High School. Congratulations to all these seniors who will be going to receive awards. The Giving Table provided meals for the West Side and North Side firehouses. They prepared 2 trays of baked ziti with a mixture of ground beef and sausage and a side of salad. Members of the Model United Nations Club attended the Hopmun Conference at the University of New Haven to discuss the Congress of Vienna, or the role that artificial intelligence plays in the world. Isabella Mora Calistretti and Michael Cotton both won awards from the conference. Congratulations to them both on this achievement. That is all for this month. We can't thank you guys enough for hosting us for the past 9 months. With that being said, we would like to introduce our new liaisons for the 26-27 school year, Kush Singh and Jada Marie Frias. Thank you.
So again, thank you to our student reps, and we look forward to meeting and working with Mario, Sam, Jada, and Kushveer next year. I trust that you're going to all break them in and show them the ropes a little bit, right? So feel free to head out to get on with the rest of your evening, and thank you again for all you've done for us. You're welcome. All right, the next part of our agenda is public comment. I'm going to read the public comment statement. Speakers may offer objective comments about school operations and programs. The board encourages speakers not to express personal complaints or defamatory comments about the Milford Board of Education personnel or any person associated with the Milford Public School System. Security issues and matters relating to negotiations and grievances will not be permitted. Consistent with the principles of the Federal Education Right to Privacy Act, discussion of students is prohibited, absent parental waiver. Public comment does not allow for two-way conversation between speakers and the board, but we welcome and appreciate your comments and opinions, and all will be taken into consideration. Please note our meetings are televised and live streamed on YouTube. We ask that you state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. So is there anybody who'd like to address the board this evening?
Good evening. My name is Neil Breisowitz. I'm a dad at Calf Pen Meadow. And I just want to say, before you guys vote on this plan, I'm really excited to see what you guys pick out for us going forwards. And, you know, you guys put a lot of effort into this, and we really do appreciate all of the, data that you had to go through to figure out which plan is best for our city. And I know that we're getting some extra funds from the state, but wouldn't begin to cover the costs that we're going to have to incur to get our schools updated to where they need to be, where they should have been by now already. So I just want to say thank you again for taking the time and effort to put this through. And I look forward to hopefully a middle school first plan. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to address the board? I should note that we do have a second public comment on the agenda before we vote. You can come back up then if you want to. Not limited to one, only one time. No one else at this time?
Hi, good evening to the board. My name is Carrie Treat Harrison. I'm here on behalf of myself, my family, and several neighbors who could not attend in advance of tonight's vote. I'm here with a deep appreciation for how much Milford Public Schools has done for my 3 children, and with a request. We're all aware that many people do not want their schools to close, and these decisions are difficult for the board and its members as well, but they are large decisions with many, many moving pieces. There are some benefits to condensing schools, many of which I'm sure appeal to those who must do the hard work of running said schools. However, I have a concern that consolidating schools and closing Calf Pen Meadow Elementary would be a loss too great to the community. Milford will already be losing Harborside Middle School, a beloved downtown fixture. The closure of still more schools will diminish the closeness and connectedness we experience in town. It is to be noted and commended that many young families move to Milford. Housing prices are strong, and much of this demand is connected to our school system. Kudos, we're doing something right. Larger schools come with some inherent efficiencies, but the human impact on our community, which is difficult to measure and impossible to quantify, is also at stake. That's what I'm here to advocate for tonight, to speak for the intangible. Perkins Eastman will naturally impel us toward change, as they must prove their own utility, and change is a constant in life. But we are the small city with a big heart, and we don't want to lose that small town character. Today's world is increasingly fragmented. Character, community, connectedness, those things cannot be bought, and they cannot be resurrected once they've been snuffed out. What's included in Perkins Eastman's analysis? Do they have a metric for the PTA meetings on the beach, both official and unofficial? Do they give a score for what it means that it's a Calf Pen rite of passage to ride your bike to school at the end of 4th and 5th grade? No, Perkins Eastman has not told you about these or many other things. The picture they paint for you, the picture they ask you to vote on tonight, is incomplete. There are opportunities in fewer and larger schools, but there are significant losses as well. The losses are harder to quantify, they're harder to see, and they're harder to speak for. But in my view, Milford Public Schools should not seek to decrease our educational and programming space. If anything, there should be an expansion of preschool services in the form of the excellent Ready to Learn program, of which my daughter, Grace, is a graduate. The difference I've seen in her kindergarten preparedness and performance mirrors all of the data that we have on preschool education. The consensus from this data is clear. Preschool education improves outcomes in virtually every single metric and has positive impacts on a child's life all the way through to adulthood. Furthermore, this would align with the overarching goals of the State of Connecticut Department of Education and Office of Early Childhood for Connecticut children. Last year, Governor Lamont announced Early Start Connecticut, subsidizing childcare through a $300 million endowment fund, which is scheduled to launch statewide in September 2027. Leveraging this new population of students will make use of school space, benefit children, and make Milford even more appealing to young families. Please vote no on any plan to close CAF Penn Meadow and eliminate our school. Keep our neighborhoods. Keep our small town character and our small school communities alive. Consider creative alternatives to addressing problems and meeting the goals of the future. Thank you all for your time on this board, and thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to address the board at this point? Okay, seeing none, I'll close this public comment and we'll move on with the agenda. Next item is the chair's report. I just want to point out to everybody that May is Teacher Appreciation Month, and we express our great gratitude towards our partnership with our teachers and for their diligence and their dedication to engaging with our students in such meaningful ways. Our teachers are truly what makes up the fabric of the district, and we appreciate all that they do for our kids. And I'll now turn the meeting over to Dr. Kutaya for the superintendent's report.
Call me talking to Mr. Brennan, I'm sorry. Thank you, Ms. Glennon. At this time, we'd like to turn things over to Ms. Kapasna for the monthly Talent Management and Development Report.
Thank you. This month, as always, you have the listing of our current job postings, personnel recommendations, retirements, resignations, terminations, and stipend appointments. I would like to point out that we are up to 11 teacher retirements. And also, I want to point out on the report, just as last month, we have done a lot of cleanup, and you will see many terminations on this report, and those are a result of this annual cleanup. People who have been on our payroll and have not been paid for over a year are automatically taken out to keep our data accurate.
Thank you, Ms. Kapazna. Do we have questions? I do want to just clarify on the terminations, there are a lot of athletic positions, so those are people that have been on the rolls and not
Correct.
actually
they haven't
worked.
worked in over a year, or they're not coming back. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Sometimes people, they don't come back and they don't tell us. They just assume that we know, and so we have to go through the payroll information and clean it up.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Ms. Kapazna? All right, thank you.
Thank you, and at this time, we'll move things over to Mr. Brennan to review the disbursement report.
Thank you, Dr. Gadaya. Ms. Glennon, members of the board. In your package, you will find a list of all the cash disbursements for the month of April over the amount of $1,500. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. I don't think I've seen this one before. The very first line, reimbursement of salaries, benefits charged to Medicaid for the Milford Board of Education student activities.
Yes, some of those are charged through the grant, and this is just a reimbursement to that fund. So it's just part of our regular, so it gets charged to the grant activity first, and then it's a reimbursement to there. So it's part of our regular benefits and salaries that are charged. So for instance, if a person's salary or benefits are charged to the grant portion, then this would just be a reimbursement of that to pass through with the funds.
Thank you for that. And then on the third page of these, yes, third page, live scan, maintenance and support, I'm assuming that is, it says for HR, so is that part of our employee background checks?
Yes, that's for our fingerprinting.
Thank you. No.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Brennan.
That completes the superintendent's report, Ms. Glennon.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is continued discussion on the long-range facilities plan. I do want to take a moment of personal privilege and just read a statement before we start. I did a little thinking about the history of Milford Public Schools these past weeks, and the history actually brings some interesting perspective. Post-World War II brought suburban growth, and there was a period of big school expansion across the country, actually. In Milford, there were dozens of K-8 schools, and then as the baby boomers aged out, the enrollment declined significantly as a national trend, and the Milford Board of Education began retiring schools. In the late 80s and early 90s, the board decided to shift to a K-5, 6-8 model and retained 12 of the K-8 schools. 9 became K-5 and 3 became middle schools in elementary buildings. So this began a sporadic period of renovation, going around the district, adding dedicated media centers to the elementary schools. Meadowside and Simon Lake had already been done in the 80s. JFK was done in 1997, then Mathewson, Orchard Hills, Orange Ave between 2001 and 2004, and then most recently Pumpkin Delight. And interspersed within those upgrades was work on each middle school and the 2 high schools. Simon Lake was then retired in 2010 in response to a $2.2 million budget reduction. The school was closed in a matter of months. And for a short time, there was a K2-3-5 structure before reverting back to K-5 in 2015. So my purpose for recounting this is to show that Milford Public Schools has gone through reorganization before, beginning in the 1990s, retiring schools, renovating those that remain. However, there was never a written, forward-thinking, long-term master plan created back then that I'm aware of. It was just an annual discussion as part of the charter-mandated 5-year capital improvement plan, which will still happen, identifying what work was needed to be done next. Individual school projects were discussed at the city level, identified for funding on a case-by-case basis, and then managed by the Permanent Schools Committee. And this remains Milford's process. The Board of Education has now spent nearly 3 years digesting and discussing data, facility information, enrollment trends and projections, district improvement plans, and community input in 2024, 2025, and 2026, as we work to develop a long-term facilities master plan. A plan, that's what this is, it's a plan that will serve as a blueprint for the next 20-plus years as we address the needs of our aging buildings. Yes, it's an ambitious plan, but we like to think big, but it's just a plan. There is no funding attached to it at this time. We are not asking for funding right now. We are saying that we need to address our aging infrastructure. We should have school facilities that reflect the needs of all of our children and our appropriate spaces for the 21st century teaching and learning. We are acknowledging that while our buildings are used very differently today, enrollment has declined significantly, and educating kids is getting more and more costly. which is why when Tony Ginatasio, as an alderman in 2023, said if we committed to developing a long-range plan, he would support reinstating a $1.8 million reduction to our budget so that we would not have to close a school in 4 months' time. We also heard from focus groups and survey responses that people seem to understand it might be time to consider replacing our aging buildings, and that they were okay with consolidation and change if it was done in a planful manner. So that has been our goal. I'm not going to recount all the steps we've taken to date, other than to say the board has done extensive work, many extra meetings and hours of review at home, and I truly appreciate the commitment of my fellow board members to this endeavor. As a Board of Education, we have to balance the competing interests of the state as its statutory authority, the city, and the district. But in the end, our ultimate responsibility is the education of 5,100 young humans as a whole. We have to look at the entire district holistically, and we are committed to ensuring that transitions are handled with care, and that our class size guidelines are maintained, and that we only have to redistrict once, and that we maintain access to current programming, and maybe even provide more for our kids. So as we've said before, the conversations will not stop with the adoption of a master plan. The conversations will continue. So with that, I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Patrick Davis from Perkins Eastman, who has some additional information to share with the board.
All right, can you hear me okay? All right, well, thanks again for having me back this evening, and thank you all for the great work you've done over the last number of years. I know this is not an easy task for any of you, and certainly thanks for the folks coming out tonight and showing their commitment to the district. And before I forget, and before I dive in, also congratulations to all the students that were recognized tonight. It's really great to be reminded of all the great students you have in the district and hear about the great things that are happening across all the schools. So we're going to go through fewer slides tonight. This is more of a follow-up from the last conversation we had 2 weeks ago. So we'll document some of the takeaways from the April 30th board meeting. We'll then talk about what that means for potential implementation and thinking about the sort of considerations that come with it. Just quickly again for folks who have not met me, I'm Patrick Davis. I'm a principal with Perkins Eastman and joined by Lauren Giamundo, here is a project architect. So just again, we've had this a few slides.
Can you maybe speak a little closer to the microphone?
Sure.
The people in the back are having a hard time hearing.
Okay, is that better? Okay, I'll try to speak really loud. Okay, so we've had this slide for the last few meetings, really just sort of recapping the last number of months of conversations. So just to sort of lay the sort of foundation for where we are today. This project was starting out with a few different directives in the request for proposals. One was to evaluate the high school portfolio and explore this idea of going to a single high school in the district. So we went through that effort, ultimately decided and landed with you all that at this point there was no viable land to accommodate one single comprehensive high school for the district. So the current portfolio in the plan will remain at 2 high schools, Law and Foreign. Next, we moved to the middle schools. The RFP outlined the desire to explore moving from 3 middle schools down to 2 middle schools. We explored student access, building conditions, property sizes, and ultimately the board decided to close Harborside in the future as part of this plan. Next, we moved to elementary schools. So we started with the current portfolio of 8. The RFP outlined the desire to move to 6 elementary schools. We made the recommendation to have a balanced portfolio of 2 schools on the east side, 2 schools on the west side, 2 schools in the center and north of the district, which ultimately led us to recommend Calf Penn and Meadowside be the schools that close. So that basically brings us to where we are, which is this sort of implementation phase of how do we start thinking about this idea of the portfolio, where investment's going to happen, how do we start sequencing those potential closures, investments in a way that makes sense for the district. So the bulk of our conversation will focus on number 4, which is the implementation. Again, just to remind folks, I think everyone's familiar, current portfolio, the elementary schools are in the green, the middle schools are in the yellow, and the blue represent the 2 high school locations. Okay, So as I mentioned, we met 2 weeks ago with you. This is a recap, a high-level recap. There's a long conversation. Obviously, we're not going to document every minute of that, but the key takeaways from that meeting. We presented after a great and sort of big conversation with the community at Law. We followed up on that and presented 5 different scenarios to you all 2 weeks ago. And based on that conversation, there were a few key takeaways that are informing where we're landing in terms of options remaining for discussion. The first part was, based on the conversation you all had 2 weeks ago, the board decided to not begin with high schools. So there was one scenario that started with high schools and then sequenced down the rest of the schools. Ultimately, the board decided 2 weeks ago to not start with high schools. There was also a good amount of conversation and desire to not pursue building middle schools on elementary sites. So one of the schemes presented building new middle schools to accelerate the middle school construction on 2 of the larger elementary sites, but ultimately the board 2 weeks ago decided not to pursue that option. Another conversation point was that the board was concerned about some of the middle school swing space scenarios, and ultimately did not want to see middle school students swinging on elementary school sites. So we removed options that had middle schools moving to potentially long-term or sort of future empty elementary sites, so focused on scenarios where middle school students would be not going to current middle school sites. And then we landed on the board's and the district's preference to focus on a scenario that started with some elementary schools, moved to middle schools, then went back to elementary schools and finished with the high schools. I will also note that one of the 5 options presented 2 weeks ago introduced a new idea of obtaining and utilizing a new property on the west side, so the Simon Lake property. After the board meeting, the district and board had subsequent conversations. Ultimately, it was decided that that land is not a viable option for the district. So the scenario that introduced a new property to potentially use on the west side is not a viable option based on conversations that have happened over the last 2 weeks. So that is just a recap of the high-level takeaways from the conversation. There were a number of other things that were presented at the last board meeting. One additional thing which I'll highlight as we go, there are some policy considerations to make as you're thinking about student assignment. We'll touch on those as we go, but it's important to recognize, modeling and impacting sort of individual cohorts of students will be critical as you think about the actual implementation of these scenarios. So we presented this last time, just to recap again, Facility Condition Index is a core part of this work and a core part of any building planning work. So Facility Condition Index represents essentially the condition of the building. It's a ratio of the current and projected deferred maintenance of a building against the replacement cost of that building. And the higher the score generally means the building is in worse condition or will be in the worst condition moving forward. So this table is sorting on the 10-year FCI score. It's also important to recognize that these assessments were done 2 years ago. So that 10 years is actually 8 years. So the conditions of the buildings are coming up against us pretty quickly. And as we've talked about, there is a significant capital need across the entire portfolio. Most of your buildings were built in the 50s and 60s and are at a point where they've got significant capital needs across the portfolio. So this table is sorted from the highest FCI score in the 10-year column down to the lowest. Generally, when you get to that 40 to 50% range is when you need to start really thinking about, does it make more economic sense to replace the building rather than continue to put smaller fixes on it. I think I shared the example last time. Many of us have gone through this sort of internal calculation when we think about our car, right? If our car reaches a certain point, maybe we've paid it off, maybe our transmission goes, you need to have that conversation internally of, does it make sense to replace that car, or we're gonna replace their transmission. It's the same thing with buildings. It's also important to recognize that this score does not reflect sort of the lived experience in the building and teaching and learning perspective. So it doesn't represent how well are these buildings supporting a 21st century learning. They're typically looking at the conditions of things like the roof, the HVAC system, plumbing, all the sort of nuts and bolts of the building. It's also, as we shared, most of your buildings were built in a different time, right? Teaching and learning has evolved, it always does, but many of the buildings are not suited for 21st century learning. We shared this during the middle school presentation. Most of your middle school science labs are really just classrooms with maybe science tables moved in there. It doesn't represent all the plumbing needs across the science curriculum and all those things. So these scores are important, but obviously don't tell the full story and tell the full condition of all your campuses. So there was some, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but there was some conversation at the last board meeting we went to follow up on, which was trying to better understand where students are living across the portfolio. So again, I won't go through all of these plots here, but as a follow-up, we did want to share, and we can reference these as we go, but these represent where students are living across the district at each of the schools. So typically the darker the red up to yellow, pink colors tends to mean there's a higher density of students living in that area. The blue represents fewer students, so we can start to see per school where are the clusters of students living. I will say, to avoid any sort of identification of student addresses, we generalized student locations to a quarter mile and aggregated to that. But generally, we wanted to make sure you understood, where are students living at each of the schools. So again, I won't go through these, but we can reference them if you need to during conversation. So we included them in the slides, so we have it for all the different grade types. Okay, so where does that leave us? Based on the feedback we heard from the meeting 2 weeks ago, we wanted to come back with hopefully a concise way to visualize and see some of the scenarios. So we've got two different scenarios to walk through. The first is we're sort of calling the base scenario, which again, based on the interest of the board last meeting, was to start with 2 elementary schools, move to the middle schools after that, based on what we believe the funding availability to be, and swing space considerations. You would sequence the middle schools one after another. So you would go 2 elementary schools, 1 middle school, then followed by another middle school, go back to the 2 elementary schools, and another 2, and then finish with the high schools. We did talk about a more accelerated schedule at the last meeting as well. So we do have an accelerated option for a conversation, which again starts with 2 elementary schools. We'll dig into these each in a little bit. Then move to sort of phase 2, which would be concurrent projects at an elementary and a middle school. And then again, the same repetition with middle school and elementary school concurrently, and then remaining 2 elementary schools. And actually, I'm sorry, that last thing should be high school, should be the remaining 2 high schools after that. So to walk through the details, we've shared this before. We're going to go through each of these, so I won't go through the details here, but it's important to recognize, I think we've shared previous slides that show the sort of the extent of a project, which is likely around 5 years. For these graphics, we're only showing construction period, so it's estimated that the construction period would be about 2 school years per project, but there's a lot of work that happens before that. So there's the budget process you all have with the city. So typically you submit your CIP request to the city in May, and it takes a number of months into the following school year to get approval. Then there's an approval process with the Public Building Committee and the Board of Aldermen and the state and the procurement process. And then you've got about a year of design. So overall, the whole project is about 5 years. But to simplify the graphics, we're showing the 2 years of construction for each in the blue. And then the orange, I'll go through the details as we go. The orange would be swing space availability and sequencing. So before we dive into each of those in more detail, we wanted to sort of have some general considerations. We're going to introduce, I think there was some conversation last time, more desire to understand more around the swing space considerations and the need for potential for modular or trailer classrooms. So we will document those needs as we go, but just sort of acknowledge a few things. First, Board President Glennon mentioned this idea of sort of redrawing boundaries once, thinking about student assignment policies. That'll be a critical step. You don't need to do it today, but it's probably something you'll want to take on before the start of any of this implementation from a construction standpoint. So we would recommend you go through that boundary process and student assignment process in the next few years, largely because right now we're modeling, we don't know exactly how boundaries will shape. We're modeling a fairly even distribution of students across schools. The reality is it probably will not be that. You'll have a little bit of schools with a little bit more, a little bit less in terms of students. In order to get those exact counts, which will impact obviously the design construction, swing space needs. That boundary process really needs to take place. The other thing I would acknowledge in that process is that's really the appropriate time to think about any student assignment policies, whether long-term or even short-term grandfathering policies to think about. So as you're going through, I think we talked about and heard a lot at the community meeting, a lot of great conversation around, well, there's a subset or small cohort of students that maybe in a closing elementary school, maybe they're scheduled to move to a middle school, they're going to close the next year and then move to another one. Those are the boundary and sort of the policy sort of considerations. A really good time to think about that. Are there short-term grandfathering measures you can put in place where maybe you're not negatively impacting those families by sending them to a school that went and closed, then have to move again? So we really recommend over the next few years, that's when you take on that effort to think about the long-term distribution of students' boundaries, because again, it's going to inform individual project design, educational specification development, any sort of short-term trailer or portable needs, and obviously all of these things will have a downstream cost impact. So it'll be critical to go through that effort over the next few years. But the reality is, all of these scenarios will require some short-term measures to accommodate capacity. So we've talked about the need before, and we'll talk about it in a very specific sense in the coming scenarios. But as you're going through this planning, there definitely will be a need for short-term measures to accommodate students before the full build-out of the portfolio. I'll use the middle schools for example. Right now, if you go down to 2 middle schools, none of the campuses have enough capacity to accommodate, call it half the middle school population. So you need to make sure that you're building enough as you're going through the construction sequencing and movement of students in the boundary process. You have enough space on the campus to accommodate all of the students. So we'll outline a high-level thinking of what that's going to look like. Again, the exact numbers may go up or down based on those student assignment and boundary conversations, but we will give you a sense for what it might take to do in the short term during swing space, but also aligning with the portfolio changes. Those can be done in a few days. We'll share some examples. But what we've seen typically is when there are portables, it's often a time you'd work with that school to say, which rooms make the most sense to be in those portable classrooms? And what we've seen many times is that sometimes for an elementary school, for example, those might become the specialist classrooms. Maybe that's a music or an art room temporarily, so that you don't have an individual student that's sitting in that portable for the entire school day. But that's going to be up to you and all in the schools to figure out how to maximize these use, but you can make some operational considerations as you're going through them. We also share some scenarios that we want to minimize the investment in portables. We don't want to unnecessarily spend money on portables. There could be some scenarios where you invest in them, and then you can actually move them in your portfolio. So maybe they're needed for a few years at school A. When school B is needing them 4 years from now, you can actually move those portables and pay a little bit of cost to move and reset up, but you're not paying the overall cost. So we'll outline some scenarios where that could be consideration. So acknowledging that these portables can be moved will help limit cost impacts. I won't go through all these details, but portables in modular classrooms come in a million different flavors. Obviously, there's price tags associated with the quality of them, but generally, most of them are properly sized for a classroom. They tend to range between 8 to 900 square feet, which is a standard size for classrooms. They actually can come with bathrooms and plumbing included. If you obviously need to pay for the installation cost of that, but as you think about the use of them, understanding who may need bathrooms, who may need access to sinks, can be part of that conversation. So essentially they can operate as a fully functional classroom. So again, you'll have to figure out the exact sort of type and model that makes sense for you all. Obviously, like I said, the cost will go up depending on the quality, but I will say even the baseline quality, we often find that they actually exceed the conditions of current classrooms. They're new, they typically have individual mechanical HVAC units in them, so oftentimes we find that teachers actually like being in them compared to the current conditions. Again, we can't speak for everybody, but the quality I think is different than many of us think of what a trailer classroom or a portable classroom can be. So as you go through the sort of process to determine who's going to be in which rooms, it'd be critical to sort of think about what are the range of options to go through. Again, I won't necessarily go through all these details, but we did, for all of these, we did model can these properties accommodate the need that we'll outline in here in a little bit. So we assumed a certain setback requirement. So not to get too technical, but you can't place a portable right next to a building from a fire protection standpoint. So we did adhere to all setback requirements, spacing between portables, but we did model all of the things we're going to outline here in terms of the number of portables that can fit on a property. Okay, so digging into that base scenario. Okay, so zooming in a little bit, and we'll have another slide here with a few more details, but just to recap the construction and swing space. So again, the blue color represents the 2 years of construction. The orange represents the swing space. So again, as we've shared previously, starting at the elementary level, with JFK and Live Oaks. Those are the two properties that we believe can accommodate new construction on site, so those students would remain in their current building. A new elementary school, properly sized based on those boundary and assignment conversations, would be built on there. One thing I forgot to mention on the boundary process, that's also a really important time to think about things like special education, pre-kindergarten, things like that will have a space impact. You don't want to think about those things once you start construction. You want to try to outline the thinking around access to pre-K, special ed, anything that will have a space component or space requirement. Try to have those conversations as you're thinking about those things. So when you're starting to build JFK and Live Oaks, again, I have no idea where pre-K would be, but if those are the sites that are going to have pre-kindergarten, for example, you want to make sure that's accounted for in that ed spec and design phase. So I think during that boundary process will be critical to think about questions like that. But essentially in this scenario, as we've shared, starting with JFK and Live Oaks, those students, as you can see, there's no orange boxes associated with them, would not require swing space. They would remain safely on site in their current building as a new building is built on their property. Then we would be moving to the middle schools, so sequencing one at a time. I'm going to jump here in a second to thinking about when schools might close or consolidate, but essentially Harborside would close. I'm actually going to do that now just to have a sort of more complete picture. So what I've added on here are two different color codes. So the purplish color represents when those schools would be in their last school year. So starting with West Shore construction, Harborside's last school year would be 30-31. Those students would then get distributed east and west to East Shore and West Shore. West Shore would start their construction. They would then move to the Harborside building for their swing space for 2 years. So you can see the green dots represent the portables required. So they're numbered, and you can see the legend below. So if you look at the Harborside, which is that bottom line, to accommodate the West Shore students, plus the additional Harborside students that would then become West Shore students, we think they're going to need about 6 additional classrooms on the property. So as you're building over the summer, you would need to accommodate 6 portable classrooms at Harborside to accommodate the total student population of West Shore, plus any new Harborside students. Again, for now, we assumed a pretty even distribution, but again, the exact details of these numbers would be ironed out when you understand the better around the policies and boundary considerations. So West Shore would have their construction. Then we would move to East Shore. East Shore would then move into Harborside. The portables would already be in place. So the East Shore students would then move to Harborside for their construction period in 33-34 and 34-35. So that gets you to the middle school portion. I'm going to go back to the other green dots. We have a note on the right. Right now, it's penciled out that Calf Penn and Meadowside's last school years would be 30 and 31. But as you can see, there is an opportunity if the board decides to delay those or push those out further, you have opportunity to do so. We just put it here for conversational point. And again, I don't know if a decision needs to be made today on that, but there is an opportunity to maybe push those closure decisions out because there's not necessarily a direct building impact. But right now, for this scenario, we penciled out the closure of Calf Pen and Meadowside in 3031. You'll see some additional green dots to accommodate the closure, so those students would then be reassigned. Again, we have not identified locations or the amount per school. That will be determined during that boundary process. But we can anticipate that some additional capacity will be needed at Pumpkin Delight and Orchard Hills to accommodate the closure of Meadowside and Calf Pen. So you see the number 2 and number 4, those students, those campuses would need temporary portables to accommodate the enrollment from the closed schools. Like I said, you could, through conversation, push those closures out because there's not a direct building impact. After that, we then move back, after the East Shore construction, we move back to the elementary school construction, going with Orchard Hills and Mathewson. I will also say this scenario is largely based on sequencing based on the facility condition index, as we discussed as a follow-up to last time. So Orchard Hills and Mathewson would then go. Mathewson would then swing into Meadowside. Orchard Hills would then swing into Calf Pen. You notice the number 4 is on Orchard Hills and, is on Calf Pen and previously Orchard Hills. That's a scenario in which you could build portables at Orchard Hills and then move them. Once Orchard Hills starts the construction, you can move them to another site to accommodate the swing space needs. So again, trying to minimize the amount of portables you're buying or releasing, you can then move those portables. So after Orchard Hills and Mathewson, Orange Ave and Pumpkin Delight would go. Pumpkin Delight would swing to Meadowside, and Orange Ave would swing to Calf Pen. And then after that, you finish with the high schools. We've shared this before, not represented on the graphic here. We've talked about the high schools would still receive programmatic investment over the next number of years to make sure they're getting the spaces and quality of spaces they need, but their major construction would be sequenced at the end. So a few important things, acknowledging that Harborside will be taking on a bit of a burden from a swing space perspective with the portables. They can fit. Right now, we believe the location that makes the most sense would be on the blacktop area for Harborside. A few other things to acknowledge in this scenario. As I mentioned, you could move the closures or the sort of sequencing of those closures for Calf Pen and Meadowside back if you so desire. It's also important to recognize in the current model, those buildings would sit empty or vacant for a few years. So if that's an unwanted part of this sequence, again, then that might lead you to sort of pushing those closures out a little bit further. A few other things to note. This, compared to the other one, would be a little more costly. Well, as you'll show in a minute, there's an opportunity to accelerate a few different things, which would have a overall program cost savings if you can accelerate some of the schedules. We've shared before, but typically from a planning perspective in construction, we assume about a 3.5% escalation rate every single year. So essentially applying that year over year. So basically the longer it takes to build, the more expensive it's going to be. But that does typically require more upfront capital. So that is scenario A. Moving to scenario B, which is a similar starting point, but as I see in that sort of middle phase, we start to try to condense some of the construction schedule to take advantage of buildings, but then also try to reduce some of those overall downstream costs. So I'll dive in on this screen. So again, similar starting point, we start with JFK and Live Oaks. But on this one, a little bit different. So again, to accelerate some of the schedule, we would try to construct both a middle school and an elementary school in that sort of second phase. So in this scenario, it's both West Shore and Orchard Hills. So similar to the previous scenario, West Shore would start their construction. They would swing to Harborside. The change here is Orchard Hills would then start their construction in 31-32. They would then swing to Calf Pen So unlike the other one, where there was an opportunity to maybe delay some of those closures, this one accelerates that and actually probably eliminates that option because you're going to need swing space availability for Orchard Hills. So in this one, the schools would close in 3031. The students would be redistributed based on the boundary assignment, but again, similar to the previous scenario, we do believe that portables will be required to accommodate the students in the temporary state. So this one's a little bit different in that we accelerate Orchard Hills. Then moving to sort of phase 3, where we would then construct East Shore. East Shore students would then move to Harborside, and then we would begin construction on Orange Ave. Orange Ave would then, move to Meadowside or Calf Pen. You could actually do, I'm sorry, I think I mixed this up. I'm sorry, Mathewson, not Orange Ave, excuse me. Mathewson would then move to Meadowside as East Shore is at Harborside. Then we would finish on the elementary schools with Pumpkin Delight and Orange Ave. Pumpkin Delight would move to Meadowside, and Orange Ave would move to Calf Pen for their swing space, and then similar to the last scenario, finishing with the 2 high schools. So one thing to acknowledge here that's a little bit different than the last one, obviously the sequencing, but sort of thinking about the individual impacts of students. In this scenario, Orchard Hills gets their project accelerated, but there likely would be students that would be moving to swing space for part of their elementary school experience. Then they would have to then move to a middle school swing space for some of that swing space as well. So there may be students that would be in swing space for elementary and part of their middle school experience. So just acknowledging that as a consideration. This one likely would be more cost effective in the overall sort of program cost. Again, we're accelerating some of those construction costs. So again, the longer we go out, the more likely it's going to be costing more. So there could be some potential cost savings in the overall program, but it would require more upfront capital in that sort of second and third phase to accommodate that accelerated schedule. So just to sort of represent them in 2 different sort of visuals. Again, I won't walk through all the details, but the base scenario, again, we don't know the exact amount of money you're going to have per fiscal year, but given that it is a little bit of a slower construction schedule, it actually may be more fiscally viable year to year. It may cost more in the long run, but the year-to-year availability might be more viable because you're only doing, in that second phase, 1 middle school at a time, compared to scenario B, which has a concurrent middle school and elementary school cost. Again, that's a conversation you all will have to have and figure out, but just a consideration. Both of them would require about 20 portables. Again, exactly sort of where and the timing of them would based on sort of the sequence and scenarios, but generally across the portfolio, about 20 portables is sort of a rough assumption. Again, the exact numbers per school is a little bit to be determined based on that boundary conversation, sort of allocation of students in special ed and pre-K, but based on sort of an even distribution model. That's generally what we've been needing. And then, again, for B, just thinking about the impact of Orchard Hills students and potentially being in multiple swing space locations is a consideration, even though their project gets accelerated. So, we tried to keep it a little more concise today. Hopefully that answered questions, but happy to take any additional questions or thoughts or support any dialogue that you all have.
Yes, I'm sure there will be questions. Can I just get a clarification on the portables? So you're saying that 20 total, or that overall 20, where some may be able to be moved?
Yeah, some, the 20 total, but some of those could be moved largely in that first scenario where you have a bit of a gap between construction, where you can move some in that first phase, move to more of the third phase for construction.
Okay.
And I believe the district got a quote around $1 million for the portables themselves for 6 portables. I will say there's often some additional costs in terms of walkways and bathrooms and things like that. But generally, we think between 4 and 5 million, maybe up to 6 million, depending on sort of things you select. Adding plumbing obviously costs money, but again, some of that will be conversations you'll have to have in terms of what's going in those spaces and sort of, like I said, there's a range of like anything, there's a range of costs, but generally between sort of 4 to 6 million.
Thank you. Ms. Doyle?
Thank you for the presentation. I would like to start on the student density maps, the elementary schools. Looking at these maps, we can see a number of students who are living fairly significant from their home school. Can you give us an idea, or Dr. Kataya, about what population generally these students are?
So the dots that are further away from the particular school, so they would represent students that are placed in our specialized programs and or preschool. Most likely is what those dots are. We're not given a list of the exact dot and who they represent, but that's what that makes sense to us.
Okay, and so part of the reason I would say our youngest and probably most vulnerable students tend to travel the largest distances based on these heat maps.
That would be a good, accurate conclusion.
So I've always thought about this plan as a possibility of putting those services closest to where the students are located. And that seems to be an opportunity with new schools and things like that, because if I understand correctly, we do not have special education programs that are appropriate in every elementary school for the students that are best served by the services.
That's correct. And in some cases, space limits that, but while our goal is to spread out those specialized services, it would not be a goal to put, let's say, an autism class in every single elementary school. We would likely locate them in a place where maybe students aren't traveling as far. So if we start thinking along the lines of feeder patterns, that we have 3 elementary schools that feed into 1 middle that feeds into 1 high school, we would start planning around the feeder pattern, asking ourselves, do we have access for specialized instruction for students with autism in each feeder pattern? For behavioral concerns in each feeder pattern, in preschool in each feeder pattern. So we start looking at it a little differently.
Okay, and then just specifically on the Pumpkin Delight, this seems to be the most, actually, there's several of them, but Pumpkin Delight is specifically pretty broad, and that's partially because it has the most space. There's different programs there, is preschool there?
No, so I would make the statement commonly for Live Oaks and Pumpkin, because our preschool populations are located at both of those schools.
Okay.
So you're grabbing from across the district.
Okay. And then just one school specifically, the next one on middle schools. We don't have space at West Shore currently for special education programs, so the students who would be best served by those services do have to travel to Harborside or to East Shore currently.
There are no specialized programs at West Shore.
Okay, thank you.
If I could make one quick point on the elementary side, there are actually a few examples where students are traveling further to get to school. So for example, Pumpkin Delight and Meadowside, many students are driving, Mathewson students are driving past Pumpkin Delight to get to school, just based on how the boundaries are drawn. So you actually may see some travel distance benefits by some of these moves, just based on how the current boundaries are set up. There's some interesting sort of shapes on the west side, but generally I think actually many students would be closer in a future state model.
Ms. Doyle, for clarification, a specialized program does not equal all special education services. So there are special education services at West Shore, but for those students who need a little bit more, beyond the regular classroom with additional support, that would be considered a specialized program, hence likely going to West Shore sorry, East Shore or Harborside. So just want to clarify, there is special ed services,
But not the extent that we would hope to have there.
we would like to have a specialized program in each middle school in the future.
Yes, Ms. Edmonds?
Thank you so much for this. The first thing that I wanted to say was that in this presentation, I noted that the school years are slightly different than in our last presentations. And so for audience members who've been following along carefully and tracking where their kid might be, just wanted to call out for the sake of clarity that in both scenario A and B, construction of the first two schools would end in 3031. And so current kindergartners would make it all the way through elementary school without being redistricted or that school being closed. So just for the sake of clarity for anyone following along. The second thing that I wanted to say is I spent a lot of time sitting with this plan over the last couple weeks, and there's one particular thing that isn't sitting with me as well as I would like, which is that specifically looking at the JFK, I don't know if there's one you can zoom in a little bit further, either scenario A or B. Specifically looking at JFK, students who will be impacted by construction in between 2029 to 2031 will then be entering swing space at West Shore, which would be 4 years of disruption. And I can't speak for what the board will do in those years, but I would think that swing space will make it as amazing as it can possibly be. Same with any kind of disruption will be carefully considered, but I still have concern that 4 years is a long time, consecutively especially. And so I had a question for you, which is, can you speak to what the impact might look like if you moved Orchard Hills up in this sequence and you went from Live Oaks, JFK, Orchard Hills, West Shore, East Shore? To me, I see benefit there in that ending with an elementary school on the east side before starting West Shore would mean that JFK kids could go and be at West Shore and have a normal couple of years and not go right into disruption. And same with Orchard Hills, West Shore would be the next thing, so they wouldn't be immediately going into disruption. One of my concerns with the scenario B is that in that scenario, Orchard Hill kids have that, right, and JFK, sorry, would both have 4 consecutive years of construction. So, or sorry, I should say of disruption. Did you consider doing 3 elementary schools first? Is there a reason not to do that?
Yeah, we certainly did. There's a few things to consider. I think your point is certainly well taken. I would say it just sort of shifts you would have a gap, but you would still have students that are impacted, right? So the earlier students, early grade students at JFK would then have a few years of break, but then they would still have to go to, so you're sort of just shifting the impact a little bit further, sort of down the grade scale. So you would still have an impact, it just wouldn't be immediate. So one thing to recognize there. I think what we were trying to balance, and we've shared this previously, but not tonight, there's this sort of give and take around when closures happen. So in the scenario outlined, unless you're going to close Harborside early, you would then have to put more portables at West Shore to accommodate some of those Harborside students, or you delay the closure of Harborside and don't do that. There's probably an operational cost impact that you all would need to consider about that delayed closure of Harborside. So again, a lot of the overall intent of the RFP and planning was thinking about that closure. So while we're talking about the capital side and sort of capital sequencing, I don't want to lose sight of that closure conversation. I think Board President Glennon, you mentioned before, you don't want to be forced into that situation, have to make really rushed decisions based on budget constraints. So we tried to find that balance of not pushing it out too far, because in the scenario outlined, I think you would have to push the closure of Harborside out pretty far. And you all know your budget better than I do from an operational sense. But that would be an impact that you would have to consider if you do that, because you know better than I, but there could be some programmatic or budget issues you would have to face on the operational side while you're figuring out the capital side. So we laid on this because we're trying to balance both of those things. But your point is well taken, but those were some of the considerations we thought about.
If I could add, if I'm not mistaken, I think this plan, this scenario A that we landed on after discussion at the last meeting, it utilizes the middle schools as its own swing space. That's what we're talking, versus putting the middle school children into elementary space as swing space.
Yeah, so this would utilize Harborside as
Right.
the middle school swing space.
And that was a direct suggestion made by a member of the community, and which we took to heart and discussed and felt that it had merit, and certainly offers us that opportunity to keep middle school age kids in middle school space for their swing space. So in this scenario, while there is that consecutive effect of the construction at JFK and then going into swing space for middle school, they are going directly into a middle school space with their peers and their teachers. They're not being separated from their friends, which is, I think, important to families, and it's just simply going into a different building than the one that the classes before them went into. So I don't really view that as a disruption. And, you know, we have talked about the construction on another part of the property that we've talked about. And I think last month you talked a lot about what often happens in those scenarios with, you know, educating the kids, involving the kids. So could you speak to that a little bit more again?
It's a pretty common practice. I mean, there's
it is.
land sort of, you know, scarcity across the country, right? I mean, not every district has swing space land, so it is a pretty common practice. I think I shared last time, during your sort of selection process, it's probably really important you pick a builder or a contractor that has school experience, and you really work with them from day one, outlining these are the things that are critical for us, and it's really their job to make sure they're accommodating whatever pickup and drop-off looks like, where we're going to identify play space. On JFK in particular, it's actually one of your larger properties, so you've actually got space that's sort of planned southwest of the current building. That's actually pretty sort of separated from the campus, so you would isolate that portion of the property for construction. You would identify and maybe put some temporary play space measures or field considerations in there for that period, and really have a safe sort of play outside experience and drop-off experience. But again, it's part of that early conversation with the builder and design teams, really trying to think about those operational considerations so that the long-term design is reflecting that, but also the building in terms of, hey, we don't want deliveries during XYZ hours, we're going to think about this. So all of that is sort of a conversation you're going to have with that selected team. But as I shared, I think last time, we've often heard that it's a really good learning experience for students. I'm not trying to minimize construction. There will be times where there's noise. But I think more often than not, students and actually staff sometimes enjoy sort of being able to show construction to their students and teach, sort of work it into the curriculum. We often hear things about parking. There is parking things you'll need to work through. So I don't want to minimize some of the operational things you'll have to work through, but there are great examples of doing it safely, using as an opportunity to teach and learn with students, and obviously keep students safe during construction. But again, it's really part of that process of selecting the right team and you know, really being at the table with them on day one so that every step is thought out properly.
Thank you. I think, too, it's worth noting that historically, we have in Milford, there has been construction done on site for additions. So while this is a grander scale, certainly, you know, when my son was at Meadowside School, they constructed a whole new wing right behind one of the other wings. You know, it's a courtyard away. It's not a huge space away, and you know, it was a long time ago, but I don't recall any major complaints from him that because of the construction.
I would argue things like additions can be often more disruptive than new construction. Oftentimes there's, hey, we hit the electrical and the mechanical went down because we were doing X, Y, and Z. New construction, you could, like I said, with the builder, sequence when, hey, our foundation work that's going to be loud. We're going to do that over these months when it's not disruptive. You can try to sequence that loud work and disruptive work in a way that makes sense with the student schedules in mind. But I have often found that additions or sort of interior renovations in an occupied setting are a lot more disruptive than new construction. Again, you need to have the right conversations, but if done well, they can be a lot less disruptive than building additions or renovating a portion of the building that's occupied.
Thank you. Mr. Koba?
Hi, thanks for the presentation. You talked about, when you were mentioning Harborside, you were talking about locations for the portables. And you said you looked at the blacktop, et cetera. Did you do a reasonable enough assessment of the amount of portables we need at each site that we'd still be able to accommodate traffic flow and things of that nature also?
Yeah, so for Harborside in particular, I will say the ultimate locations, again, you'll have an individual project that'll sort of work through all that. We assumed that was the least disruptive space from a pickup and drop-off, so we maintained the current parent drop-off, the current bus drop-off on the property. The sacrifice would be that blacktop space, which unfortunately is a lot of their play space. Again, I can't speak for you operationally, but you do have the benefit of the park just next door, which could be sort of leveraged and maximized to accommodate some of the outdoor PE space. But in order to fit the 6 or so portables you would need, that was the logical spot. I will also say you probably want them contiguous to the extent feasible. You don't want one portable here, one there, one there. So you're trying to find enough space where you can actually have them sort of in a contiguous sense. You sort of build a community there too with staff.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Mr. Scobie?
Thank you. It's weird having a mic. So I have been wrestling with this a lot since the last time we met. And the more and more I've been thinking about this, the more I am kind of in agreement of that middle school first initiative. I know that was kind of something we discussed last time. We kind of talked about shying away from that. But to Ms. Edmonds' point with the consecutive disruption, I just can't kind of shake the idea that a student going 4 years through 4 years of disruption could end up changing kind of the impact of their overall educational journey, right? And we all have seen the stats or have read about it or heard about it in some way, you know, how much of an impact finishing high school can have and getting a college degree or finding a career in a trade. And I just can't help but worry about that double impact that students might have. And I understand construction on site could be considered a light disruption or distraction, and that moving to Harborside after JFK, they'll be moving with their teachers and they'll be moving with their classmates, but they're also still moving into a spot that, you know, they just went through construction on site and then moving to a spot that has trailers on site, and it could just, you know, lower morale is all I'm thinking. It could impact, right? And so I just want to toss out an idea and just kind of get your opinion on it. You've kind of already touched on this a little bit with operational costs, but I was looking at your third scenario from last time, which started, oh goodness, I don't remember now. I'm going to modify it a little bit anyways. So I was considering the first phase starting off with Live Oaks and East Shore at the same time. And the reason behind this, Live Oaks is way high up on the FCI, so that's why I think we start on that side of town rather than JFK and West Shore. But you hit Live Oaks and East Shore at the same time, so they're going through construction. While they're at Live Oaks, that settles and they move into a new building, right? They only get impacted once. Do the same thing on the other side of town. JFK and West Shore at the same time. JFK has the disruption of construction. They're all going to be disrupted in some way, but this way they're not doubly impacted. They go through construction on site, they move into West Shore. And I understand there's a lot of moving pieces that happen with this as well. I mean, I'm trying to think about pros and cons of it all. Harborside, closes earlier on in this case because, Live Oaks and East Shore, half of East Shore would have to move into Harborside, half of Harborside would have to move out to West Shore. Modulars would have to come into play, but modulars are coming into play regardless, right? And I understand that there's limitations in specialized programs at West Shore, but maybe with the addition of modulars, we can add something in. I don't know. I'm just hopefully optimistic about, my own pipe dream that I just came up with. But I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are on a plan like this, where we hit Live Oaks and East Shore, and then JFK and West Shore, and then honestly, beyond that, it just kind of whatever makes sense FCI-wise. It seems flexible. I did not think beyond this, so just with your brain of everything, I'm just kind of curious what your opinion is of that. Without sort of doing the mental math as we're going, I mean, it's certainly something that we did think about. I do think it does have, you would have to close Harborside pretty soon, early in the process and have them distribute. One of the challenges is it would really significantly increase the portable need at West Shore. So West Shore is the more overcrowded middle school. So to accommodate, let's call it half of Harborside, just from an even distribution standpoint, you would have to add a pretty significant number of portables. I can't tell you the exact number right off the top of my head, but you would have to add a number of portables at West Shore to accommodate that program. So that is a consideration. You mentioned portables are needed, but it would definitely increase the amount of portables that would be needed. Then I think it gets down to the conversation we were having with Ms. Edmonds around this idea of when does closure need to happen. You may be sort of pushing out the elementary closures pretty far out in the plan by doing that, or you close them early and then you increase your portable need again. So it's sort of this give and take from an operational cost perspective of, are we going to spend money on portables, or are we going to try to spend money and sort of redirect that maybe towards the classroom? So it's sort of that give and take around the operational cost, because typically that's how you would pay for portables. So I think it would push those closures. Again, I don't have the exact years of when it would happen in my head, but it probably would push the 2 elementary school closures out pretty far in the process, or you close them early and have to spend that money on portables to accommodate. So there would be some additional, I think, operational cost in particular impacts. I think as I shared, I can't speak to your operational budget, but I do know that has been a pressure point in the past. So where we landed here was, as I mentioned, was trying to balance some of the capital plus operating cost, which is why we sort of landed in this spot. But those would be my initial thoughts, is sort of increasing those operational costs by delaying closure and increasing the sort of portable costs, if not. Just a couple follow-ups, and I know I just sprung this on you, so I don't really expect you to be able to throw out a solid number, but I know we talked about budgeting about $8 million, I think, total for swing space, and so just kind of curious your thoughts on how close to that, or if we would end up exceeding that with my new pipe dream. And then the other thing I was considering too is, if we were to close down Harborside in this plan, and then hit the middle schools relatively quickly, what could it look like using Harborside as swing space for Calf Pen or Meadowside to try to, get those to close still a little bit sooner rather than pushing them out too far?
Yeah, I think you would have to use Harborside in that scenario, unless, again, you're going to close Calf Pen and Meadowside early and then redistribute those students. You would probably have to use Harborside early in the process, which may increase access considerations in terms of students from the east and the west getting there. So again, I can't give the exact number, but I would say this without giving, I would hesitate to give you a sort of rough order of magnitude number, but that would be the most expensive sort of operational cost from a portable and sort of closure standpoint. I wish I could give you a number, but I would rather not just sort of spit out a random number.
In thinking of the middle school first option, one of the other concerns that I had was that in terms of redistricting, so ultimately we're going to have 3 elementary schools that feed into middle school. So the elementary school boundaries will have a direct correlation to the middle school. And doing middle school first, you push those elementary dates out considerably, which means you don't really have accurate enrollment information to make really good maps. And you end up with the potential of having to redistrict more than once, in my opinion, which is something that we've been very clear we don't want to do. I think also in our last meeting, we kind of all agreed that we did not want elementary kids in middle school swing space and vice versa, which is kind of how we landed on the last options that we all kind of agreed to would be the funnel, trying to narrow down. But I think the redistricting piece is the most concerning piece for me. We know that, redistricting is something that typically brings a lot of concern, and we do not want to have to do it more than once.
I would agree that you want to do it thoughtfully once. It's a hard process, right? It's a challenging thing to get right and make sure you're getting the right community support. So going through that multiple times can be challenging. So when you're doing it, you do want to be as planful as possible and then sort of forward-looking as possible and have as much at your sort of fingertips as possible. I
think I'm the only one, maybe Mr. Brennan was here, but was in the district last time we did redistrict. It's not easy to do, and it's almost as stressful as this has been, so. Ms. Tedros?
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your presentation. This has been really useful information. I know we have mentioned it in previous conversations, but Ms. Glennon, I would just love to hear a little bit more about when, or just like state on the record tonight, we are voting on a plan tonight. How many times, or what is the frequency in which we will have to revisit the plan and re-vote on the plan throughout this entire scenario?
Well, from the strictly technical point of view, a board would be revisiting the plan every year because we have to adopt a 5-year capital improvement plan. So that is the process per city charter, is that every year the Board of Education and the city have to adopt a 5-year capital improvement plan that identifies the needs of the town over the course of the next 5 years. So it's an annual process that the Board of Education does in May, so we're a little bit behind at this point. It's then incorporated into the city plan, which the mayor then presents to the Board of Planning and Zoning Board, I think in December, Board of Aldermen in January, and then the bonding requests begin. So the bonding is the piece that's like a mortgage, so that's how you pay for your capital improvements over time. And that happens, the Board of Finance looks at the bonding requests for the next year, so it's a 1 year at a time, one project at a time. Board of Finance approves, and then it goes to the Board of Aldermen for approval. So these, each project has to go through a series of approvals, but it really is an annual review. So we would take our 20-plus year plan, and the district will have its waterfall, but every year you're taking 5-year chunks of that and putting it into the capital improvement plan that goes before the city at that point. And it's not until each individual project is approved for bonding, that there's any money involved. So at this point, again, it's just a plan that identifies what we believe the needs are of the district, because they are so extensive. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really important to note that this feels very final, and we are talking about 20 years into the future, but this is one step in a very lengthy process. I think it's an important step to get us to where we need to be, but it is just a first step, and there are many more opportunities for conversation, to learn, to revisit, and revise as we go through this process. So thank you.
To that point, I think we've talked about it before. I think it's also really important to recognize each one of these will have very specific and individual conversations around what makes sense for that school from a design construction standpoint. So we're just showing blue bars on a graph here, but ultimately those will be conversations at each individual school community with you all around program, design, considerations. So there's a lot of conversations to happen over the next number of years from a planning perspective, but also individual project perspective. This is not deciding what that building looks like or that one looks like. It's just sort of to lay out a sequencing for how to think about that capital request.
Correct, and the piece I didn't mention is the permanent schools facility. That's not the exact name of it, but that's what I call it. It's a long name. We have 2 members of the Board of Education that sit on that committee. It is an actual city committee. It's under the jurisdiction of the Board of Aldermen. So the chair of the Board of Aldermen appoints the people to that committee, and they are the managers of every school project. So they have to hire the architect, they have to hire the builders, they have to cross all the T's, dot all the I's, they have to go through the state funding processes, the state approval processes. It's very, very extensive. That's why it takes so long for a project to go from point A to point B. That committee, it would be incumbent upon our Board of Education members on that committee to be the voice of the vision at that point. Ms. Brown?
This question is more for Dr. Gataya. When I think of a school, all our buildings kind of look the same, the cinder block buildings. When I think of school culture, I think of the staff inside of it. I mean, all of you probably know your secretary at the school, the principal, your teacher. It's the people inside the building that make your school. And I don't devalue that there will be disruption in how your child gets to school or gets home from school. That'll change. Especially for working parents, that can be hard. But when I focus and I'm thinking of disruption, I guess I don't think of it in the educational sense. And maybe Dr. Gataya, you could help us understand how, if I had a student that had to go to Harborside and use portable, I would be fighting for the portable because it has AC. I'm just putting that out there. I don't know who decides that, but I would be like, I want one of those. I would want to know, how can we guarantee that our middle schoolers, our elementary schools, when they're in that other space, how they are experiencing it as they did in their original school?
Well, you bring an interesting point up in that it's not bricks and mortar that makes a school community. It's the people in it and around it. And that to me is transportable from building to building. So we'll take the current, let's just say West Shore teaching staff, paraprofessionals, secretaries, principal, you're lifting it and moving it over to Harborside. Certainly we have to merge some staff. Obviously that's going to happen if you're going to close one middle school and create 2. So there'll be some changes and difference there. But I think our staff have already demonstrated their commitment to our vision and mission and the sense of belonging. If you weren't around 6 years ago, that was a perfect time where virtually our teachers went above and beyond to extend the sense of belonging to the extent possible during a pandemic, right? So I think that doesn't change through construction. And if you've ever been around the magic of our teachers, they're going to make an incredible experience of the the disruption. As we're using this word disruption, and I keep thinking here, there are probably different definitions of disruption right now, right? I was just on the phone with the superintendent of Cheshire today, just to pick his brain on, so how did it go? Because they built a new school. I think they went from 3 to 2 schools and built 2 new larger schools, actually. They're building to 650. And going from 450 to 650. And like, not like JFK, but even, they built a new school and a stone's throw away on the same property, like we're suggesting for Live Oaks and JFK, but I'm thinking it's closer in proximity. And he confirmed disruption, but when I asked him to quantify it, like give me an example, he said, if you're asking me to quantify it, I would describe it as minimal. Sure, did we have to change our recess pattern and find a different place to play? Yes, because we took up all the land. But he gave me 3 examples of how actually it boosted the school community. Because if you talk about morale, be around a school who's going from a 1950s building to a 2026 building, that's energizing. Kids watching the beams being raised, and actually he talked to me about having a raise the beam ceremony where they were raising the last beam of the infrastructure, of the structure, and they got the whole school out there and they had a rally, and they did a raise the beam rally, and each kid was able to lay a brick and actually put mortar on it so they could say that they actually helped quote unquote build the school building. So he said it infused a spirit and energy into the school that he believes will carry into the new building. So I understand why our focus is discussion of losses and the negative side, but there's a whole lot of good that's going to come out of this that I understandably we don't spend a lot of airtime on because there are so many concerns. I get that. But I'm glad you're asking it because actually on the other side of this, there will be so many benefits and wins for kids and teachers. AC being one.
Ms. Edmonds?
I'm really curious. You mentioned that he talked about changing recess patterns because they used up all the space with portables, for construction. Did he explain how that worked?
Sorry, we didn't go into... I don't think it was all the space because that's my elementary school. And I know that there was, I know where they put the building and there was a whole nother area of play space. So I don't think it was all the space, but maybe they had to move like a playscape or something.
Yeah, he specifically noted the playscape, so he did not go into specifics on how they adjusted.
Thank you. I've sat about this as everyone has sat through this conversation, and I distinctly remember the October 2023 meeting where we started this conversation. I was sitting in a hotel room in Florida on the meeting. It was being held in Jonathan Law, all of those things. So to come to understand the stark reality of our schools, that was shocking to know that, and to sit on the Permanent Schools Committee and to see those activities occur and what it takes to renovate a building is a lot of work, and it is incredibly disruptive. And I only sat on the outside. I wasn't in the building, but I know of what had to occur. So with that being said, I do not agree with the middle school first plan because our needs are greatest at the elementary school. We have at least 3 schools that have not been renovated. And, Pumpkin Delight was the first school we've touched since, I think we started construction in 2021 or 2022, and we literally just wrapped it up, closed the project a month ago. And there's a huge gap between. And so when it comes to it is the elementary school, we have space to put them on at Live Oaks and JFK. There are great needs there, and there are two opportunities here, is that there is special education funding and there's preschool funding. Those are two driving costs of our district of special education placement, so if we can create some opportunity for space for children and identify them and provide them supports early within their education opportunities within the city of Milford, that is a huge opportunity for us. We've had multiple discussions about preschool. Right now, we have Ready to Learn and students who help support that. We do not have a comprehensive preschool program across the city of Milford. There are questions about what will happen in the future from the governor's standpoint, and even if we are not required to support every child in preschool, we simply do not have enough space to support that. So there is no easy solution, and there's going to be disruption. And when I think about that conversation is, how can we minimize that? And I believe that we will take, any board that's here cares so deeply about this opportunity to set the tone for Milford for the next 50 years that we're going to do it. There's going to be multiple conversations over and over again. And to be truthful, looking at either A or B plan, we've talked about A is more expensive than B and vice versa, but I don't know as a board or as a member of this board, I can reasonably represent that I support spending $60 million on a capital improvement plan every single year for the next 5 years. I mean, that, we all live in this world, it's expensive, it's incredibly expensive. And so that timeline that's laid out here presumes that the board is going to vote to recommend $90 million to put on a capital improvement plan, that all the steps go forward and we do that, and then we do that each year. So from that, like, I think there's a lot of opportunity to continue the conversation regarding disruption. We have to have a starting point to roll from there. And that's, so I'm not for a middle school perspective because our needs are most at the elementary school.
Ms. Edmonds?
Ms. Doyle, I'm glad you brought up years of when things were done, because I have a question related to that. So I'm looking at a document that shares the last year each of our schools was touched with an addition. And just wanted to call out that the last time Live Oaks was touched is 1968. And the last time JFK was touched is 1997. The last time Orchard Hills was touched is 2003. The last time West Shore was touched is 2017. And so I'm curious, it's come up before in board meetings that if we knock down a building that received state funding before the 20-year mark, that we will have to give the money back, give some of the money, a prorated amount of the money back to the state. I'm curious if, maybe Mr. Brennan, this is a question for you. We've talked about building a new building at West Shore. And so if that is the case, and that in this plan, West Shore is starting in 2031 to 2033, can you speak to how much money we would be paying back to the state?
Sure. So, yes, that is accurate. And just to go back to the beginning of your point there, it is on a 20-year repayment plan, and it's a linear calculation. It's not on like a depreciation value. It's just a linear calculation of divided by 20. So when you look at when that school is actually going to be retired, and if we look back at the actual year, I believe it would be 2033, I think, is when we are actually retiring that building. You're about 4 years off from that 20-year period from when that was touched. And if you look at the actual 2017 edition, I believe it was about 9,000 square feet, so it wasn't the entire building. So the scope of that project wasn't like you just built a brand new building in its entirety. So that loan, not to say that that was, that any dollar spent is something that we need to consider, is not as much as it would have been to build a new school. So it's not like a new school was built and we're knocking that down. It was a portion of that for about 9,000 square feet. And there would be about 4 years left. So looking at the timing of that, I think does impact it, but with 4 years left, that wouldn't be the significant amount of money that you would be thinking in terms of a tire build.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Is it, does the clock start when the money is, when does the clock start? So I'm assuming that this 2017 is when the addition was finished.
Yes.
So
And
does
the
the clock
clock
start
would start when the building was finished.
opens?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know off the top of your head how much we spent on that addition?
I can get that number for you in 1 minute if you just give me a moment. It looks like that project was 15 million for the capital improvement money.
Sorry. So going back to what I said before, in a world where we were to put Orchard Hills further up in the sequence, that would get us to 1 year before our West Shore timing is up, right? And highlighting once again that the last time Orchard Hills was touched was 2003, compared to 2017, where we spent $15 million at West Shore. I think there are a lot of considerations that go into the reason why we have middle schools this far up in the plan when our elementary schools are really the buildings that need so much more help. And one of those reasons is the need to close Harborside sooner, right? But what I'm hearing is that we're paying money back to the state. And does that outweigh, just wondering from a taxpayer standpoint, we're giving money back to the state. We just spent $15 million on that building not that long ago. And I just wonder if that is the best case scenario for both our students and our taxpayers.
I don't want to complicate the math, and I don't want to do it standing here. The other factor to consider, though, is the escalation cost of a project. So delaying a higher cost project like a middle school, you multiply that by 3.5% every year. So there is an added cost to delaying any project, but you know, that math, sort of the higher the value of that project, the longer you delay it, the more that's going to cost. So just, I don't want to do the math, but just putting that point out there as well, that there's a cost component there as well.
Mr. Brennan, did you by chance do the math? So it's,
Yeah.
Ms. Doyle is also just mentioning that the 15 million was the cost of the project. It was not our state reimbursement. So it's only the state reimbursement that you're paying.
That is accurate as well.
Right, so it's,
And then just one additional clarification. It looks like the first chart that you're referring to, Ms. Edmonds, is like our internal chart of just a summary statement of when those buildings are bonded. I think that the bonded is when that number, that first number you were looking at is at 2017. It seems that based on our records here that 2020 is when that project was completed. So it's 3 years out from that.
So what we need to do is double check with the state on whether the clock starts at 2017 at time of bonding or 2020 at time of completion of project. So there would be a 3-year window there that we would just need to get clarification on.
That's accurate.
but in any case, it's,
A portion of the 15 million that is reimbursable.
so that portion
It's not the full 15.
divided by 20
Yeah.
times whatever that final
number of
is.
years,
So
right.
it's not, so for, 15 million divided by 20 times 4 is 3 million, is what I came up with. So it's less than that.
Yeah.
It would be less than that, considerably less than that.
Yeah. Do you know what the
Yes.
reimbursement rate was at the time?
It was most likely in the mid-30s. I could find that rate for you. Currently, we're at 36.79% reimbursement.
Right.
My quick calculation was $75,000 a year, based on a 30% reimbursement rate, which left 1.5 after 5 years. So divided by that would be $75,000.
And your point, Mr. Davis, was delaying the more expensive project escalates the costs with that compounding percent. I think, I might have said this before, but in looking at a plan that allowed us to keep middle school kids in middle school swing space, it also meant that we had to separate out the middle school projects and do them one at a time, which then further pushes out that middle school piece. I think it's important from my perspective that, I like the fact that we're staggering, we're doing some elementary and then some middle school. I think that's important. It allows us to address the needs of both levels in a shorter time frame. And we are already kind of pushing out the middle school piece by that construction time, the construction time of the second piece would be, because we're not doing them together. And I think, I'll leave it at that. Ms. Flowers?
Thank you. So with scenario A, I just want to run through something. What I'm really struggling with is, as Ms. Glennon said, this is an ambitious plan. I have concerns that we are never going to get the funding from the city this quickly, year after year. So in scenario A, when we completed JFK and Live Oaks, in theory, Meadowside and Calf Pen could remain open.
They could, yes. So in here, you wouldn't need to necessarily close them from a building perspective.
Right.
As I've shared, I think there's probably some operational, programmatic cost considerations that you'll need to wrestle with. But from a building perspective, there's no need to. We kind of close them at the earliest timeline here with those things in mind. But if you all decide that it makes more sense to keep them open longer, that's a decision you all have to make. But there's no building decision that restricts them from.
And if we did close them, there would be 4 portables at Orchard Hills and 5 portables at Pumpkin Delight until those schools are rebuilt.
Correct. With caveat, those numbers may go up and down a little bit based on the boundary process, but generally that's sort of a rough number to consider.
My concern is while I know that that is what this plan is, that is what the Board of Aldermen asked of the Board of Ed to do, is consolidation of schools. My concern is we will reach an endpoint with JFK and Live Oaks and then not see funding until I don't know when. And then kids could be in trailers. I mean, portables, they do look great. I mean, the AC looks great. Like, you know, but, you know, just from a, you know, that is a concern that I have that I think, you know, we all, I think, share, that we want new schools for our kids. They deserve new schools. But it is not up to us on when we are getting the money.
Yeah, I mean, that is a fair point. In this scenario, as sort of described here, there is that risk of, if funding does not come and you close schools, you do have portables left in that portfolio. It's just a consideration. I think to the point of an annual sort of review process with the city, I think you'll start to get a better, I would imagine you'll get a better sense sort of year by year, and as you're making that sort of decision point around the closures, which again is, you know, a number of years out from now, I would imagine, I would hope you would have a little more clarity than we would have sitting here today if you're in constant dialogue with the city, but it certainly would be a risk point that you're raising.
Thank you.
Can you explain how you came up with the fact that you would need 5 portables to accommodate Mathewson students at Meadowside?
Yes. So that would be the combination of, so the Meadowside students, so a portion of the Meadowside students, and then the Mathewson students. So basically we did an even distribution of where Meadowside students would go on the west side. So it's the number of students that would be redistributed from Meadowside to Mathewson and those students combined.
I think when Meadowside is retired, Meadowside students would go to Pumpkin Delight and JFK. So it should be empty. So I'm struggling with the portable piece, the number of portables. Dr. Kutai, am I?
So sorry, I misspoke. We actually think we took the sort of the Orange Ave to the east, Mathewson to the west, assuming there's going to be a boundary process,
Right, okay.
divided across the three schools, because there will be some students that'll be going north, some west. So it is sort of, I misspoke, it was the 2. It's the division of 3
All right.
on the west side.
That makes more sense.
Yeah,
Thank
sorry
you.
for the confusion.
Still not sure on the number, but I'll take your
like
word
I said,
for it.
Yeah, like I said, we did an even distribution.
Yeah.
For now, honestly, it's very premature because you do have to go through that boundary process to determine how many students would go north versus south or west or east. This was sort of, as I mentioned, even distribution of the schools from Mathewson to the west side, Orange Ave to the east.
Ms. Edmonds?
I'm trying to wrap my brain around the costs. We talked about $1 million plus for 6 portables. And Mr. Brennan, maybe this is for you. Can you speak to what would the cost difference be between having 6 portables because we closed Meadowside versus just keeping Meadowside operating? I know that that's a complicated answer, but that's sort of what I'm wrestling with right now. It seems somewhat extreme.
Can you define closed Meadowside? You mean close the doors and lock it up?
So, no, I'm sorry. I'm looking at, I think they're the same thing. So, I'm looking at scenario B. Maybe I should be looking at A. Let's just keep it on B since I'm on this page. I'm looking at scenario B on page 24, where it says that in 2033, so in this plan, hypothetically, Meadowside is closing and being redistricted in 2031 when JFK and Live Oaks are complete. And then there's nobody using it for 2 years. And then we have Mathewson kids there. And when the Mathewson kids are there, we need portables. Sorry, let me rephrase that. When we redistrict, hypothetically, in 2031, Pumpkin Delight needs 5 portables to accommodate Meadowside kids. That's what I'm talking about. Sorry, I misspoke. Is that more or less expensive than just keeping the kids at Meadowside?
So I think that question really depends on that element of a crystal ball, right? So there are some fixed costs that we could probably really predict with the heat, electricity, water. Those kinds of utilities are pretty predictable over time. I think the unpredictable piece of that is a pipe breaks, right? Like we were talking about Meadowside needing a new boiler and the pipe's getting really close to going. And there's been a few times where our facilities department had to make some emergency repairs on there. And I know that's one of those items that we talk about that's up and coming, which is going to be a real large portion, $2 million plus to replace that. So those are the unpredictable pieces to it. So there could be a straight calculation with the utility portion of it. I think these projects that could arise in our aging buildings is the unpredictable nature of that answer.
May I jump in? I think there are other things to consider, though. So that means you won't redistrict, right? If you keep Meadowside open?
I'm not sure, just exploring.
So let's go down that path a sec, if we're exploring. So if you're building a new JFK, the state won't let you overbuild. If you overbuild, you won't get a certain portion of it reimbursed. So if you build JFK to the 450, 480 number we've been using, but don't occupy it with that number of students, then you're jeopardizing a reimbursement rate on a portion of the building that would be considered overbuilt.
Space standards.
Yeah, they use space standards. So you could possibly be losing money on that end also. So that would need to be calculated into the formula.
Mr. Brennan, can I just clarify one thing you said?
Sure.
Utilities, and if something breaks. I remember from our budget sessions that we continue to pay utilities if it's still our building under the jurisdiction of Board of Ed. And in this plan, we're continuing to use the Meadowside building until 2037. So I would assume utilities would be less if there's no one in the building. But if a pipe were to break, we would still need to fix it because we need, in this plan, Mathewson and Pumpkin Delight kids will still be going to that school.
That's accurate, yes.
So that wouldn't really be cost saving. I mean, sorry, saving is the wrong word. We'd still be paying utilities and we would still be fixing the pipe, even if there's no Meadowside kids in that building at that time. It's just an empty building, we'd still be paying those things.
Yes.
So,
unless the building was turned over.
okay. And Dr. Tai, I hear you on state reimbursement and that being a consideration of moving Meadowside kids. I would also think that the idea of moving as many kids to a brand new amazing school is going to be really exciting someday. I wonder though, just the toll of I mean, to Ms. Flowers' point about we're never sure if and when we'll get funding for things, and if for the Meadowside kids that get redistricted to Pumpkin and then end up in a trailer with AC, how long is that? I mean, I'm just thinking of those kids. So I think there are different things to weigh here.
If I could just make one additional point on the cost component. Obviously, there are building costs to maintain, sort of keep buildings running. There's also cost to operate a school from a program and staffing standpoint, all that, that'll have to be factored into that calculation as well. So the savings are not just utility savings, right? There's just a cost to run a school.
I'm going to ask again, I'm going to go back to the portables because I'm struggling with this. My understanding was that, so just to play this out, we increased the capacity. I'm just going to use JFK as the example. We're going to rebuild JFK. We're going to increase the capacity of JFK. Meadowside students would be then redistricted to Pumpkin and JFK. I'm not understanding still why we would need portables at Pumpkin for those kids, because we're going to, a lot of them are going to go to JFK because we're going to increase the capacity at JFK. So would we not, we've talked about making sure that we are building a school, we're right-sizing it and building it to the level that we need it to be to accommodate those students. So.
Sure, so I think I just want to think out loud to make sure I'm following along, okay? I think it goes back to Ms. Edmonds' point too, like we're trying to move kids in our heads, right? So forgive us if it's confusing. So August 2025 elementary numbers came in at 2451. So let's just use that number, assuming we know that's going to be a little bit less in the future. So if we take 2451 and divide it by 6 schools, it's 408.5. So that means we would have 6, if this is based on the assumption that the board is planning to build 6 similar size schools, then that means we would have 6 schools with about the capacity, if you're going to build to 80%, right? We're not going to build to 100%. So 409, can you help me with this math?
We assumed a capacity of around 450.
450, thank you. So we're going to build 6 schools of about 450. So let's just use that number. So JFK is built to 450. You're going to have about 409 students at Pumpkin, 409 students at JFK, 409 students at Mathewson, et cetera, right? So if you're only going to redistrict once, you have to make plans for about 400 students at each school if the board is planning to build each school at the same size. So when you redistrict, you have to plan for about 400 students at each elementary school. I don't know, so going back to the portables, I believe you need portables in order to fit 409 students at Pumpkin. Am I following along?
I understand that, but this goes back to the comment several meetings ago that we need to look at where the students are in each district, because it might not be 409. I mean, if you look at the number, what is the enrollment today at Meadowside?
Mr. Giancola, I only have projections. Can you give me a number for today, please?
I do have it somewhere. I have to find it, though.
265.
And Pumpkin?
With preschool?
Without both.
With preschool, it's 289. Without preschool, it's 180.
So in my head, the question is, how many we know that the Meadowside School District goes all the way down to that little arm down Milford Point Road, all the way to West Shore. So in my mind, I'm thinking how many of those students, how many students live there, and how many because they would likely be redistricted to JFK. So this just goes back to the thinking that we may not really need 5 portables at Pumpkin Delight. I'm
Right.
finding that hard to believe that we would need 5 portables at Pumpkin Delight. I know that we have to estimate, we have to come up with a number, but I think we're at the point where we need to start someplace with this.
It all depends on where the future,
Correct.
at the future
Right,
point,
yep.
where will we draw the lines?
Right,
And
correct.
will the board decide at point of decision, do we need 6 450 schools, or do we need 2 larger ones because of density of where students live? But we don't have that information nor
Right,
that decision at this
understood.
time. So it could be 5, it could be 3.
So, to my point is that we need to have a starting point for this, and there is certainly a lot of information that is to be determined when we get closer to the point of doing the work.
I'll just add, having gone through this a lot, we really hesitated to make any assumptions around boundary lines. 'Cause
Right.
It's obviously it's a very lengthy conversation that you will have to have with the community. So we did take the sort of even distribution approach, understanding that it likely would shift.
Correct,
things, right?
yep.
So we just didn't want to make any premature assumptions of, hey, the line here, and that's, because that leaves a signal that I don't think any of us are.
Absolutely. And again, I come at it with the perspective of having gone through the process the last time of drawing the lines, and I know how hard it was, but I also know where the lines are and why the lines are the way they are. So my thought process is kind of rooted in that. Ms. Edmonds?
Just going back to the cost of the portables for a minute, maybe this is Mr. Brennan, because I think this number came from you. That $1 million-ish for 6 portables, plus the extra cost of pathways and all that, is that a one-time cost, or is that an annual cost?
So the quote that we received was about 1.1 million for 6 classrooms, and that was for 2 years. So it's not a purchase type agreement. It was basically a rental, for lack of a better term.
Gotcha. And just to say it out loud, looking at this one more time, Pumpkin won't be, if all goes well, Pumpkin will be constructed by the end of 2037. So we will need portables there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. That's a pretty significant cost. This question is about play space. Some people don't know this about me, but my work is recess, and so it's really important to me that kids have space outside to be able to play. Can you speak to, number one, at JFK during construction and Live Oaks, how much room is going to be available for play space? I know you can't for sure say because you're not designing the building, but based on your blocks, will there still be adequate room for playing? And my second question is about Harborside. You mentioned that there won't be room for playing outside. Is that true? Or is that
So our current thinking is the portals would have to go on the blacktop where the basketball courts are. Again, outside of our purview, but I would imagine there could be an operational agreement to use some of the park space, the baseball fields and the grass for play space. You do have the benefit of having that for Harborside. I don't have the exact square footage on JFK and Live Oaks in terms of how much space there would be, but likely the play spaces would have to be, again, we don't know where the exact buildings are going to be, so I really want to be cautious to not say based on whatever we've mocked up is sort of the final solution. So understanding that this could vary widely. Play locations in terms of structured play equipment, things like that, may have to be moved. JFK certainly has more space than Live Oaks. Live Oaks is a little bit of a smaller fit from a property standpoint, but we do think there is space to move some of those structured play equipment and safely away from a construction site. I don't have the exact square footage that I can happy to share with the team, and we can calculate that.
What about in these scenarios where we have portables, several portables at the other elementary schools?
So
does that take up the play space?
We tried to actually, I think all of them, to maintain the play space, so we tried to maximize sort of non-structured playtime, whether that's blacktop or open grass, or the structured play equipment. So we tried to fit it on, again, the exact locations will have to be determined, A, once you know how many exactly are needed per site based on the boundary conversation, but then B, with those teams to place them. We made some assumptions, but our rule is to try to maintain as much play space as possible, not taking over, with the exception of Harborside, trying to maintain blacktop space, any sort of open field space when possible. So for example, on Calf Pen, sort of biasing towards the northeast side, so closer to behind the, closer to the cafeteria side back there, maintaining the sort of planned south side where there's blacktop and field to try to maintain that.
I don't remember from the picture of the wetlands. Are the wetlands at Calf Pen impacted at all by portables, by play space?
Yep, so the wetlands essentially go straight up to the building line where the gym is now. So we would basically keep that line in sort of a no-build scenario. So basically the portables would be to the west of that line. Again, the exact locations will have to be determined once you get teams, but that was our initial planning. But again, trying to maintain that play space where possible. And sorry, the wetlands, to be clear, that line is the setback line. It's not the actual wetland, so there's a building setback from the wetlands that basically gets you to that line of where the multi-purpose room is.
Other questions? Ms. Doyle?
I make a motion to recess.
Anybody opposed to a recess, a 10-minute recess? So we can discuss draft, and we have to draft a motion as well. So. All right, we will come out of recess at 10:19. We're going to move on to, we had a second public comment on the agenda for anybody that might want to address the board after the presentation and before we vote. Yes. Please state your name and address for the record and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi all, I'm Babs Donnelly. I've been at these meetings, so I think I'm a familiar face. I'm at 52 Meadowside in Milford. And I want to say thank you. I've heard a lot of thoughtful comments tonight, and I do want to just sort of, I guess I want to reiterate that I know this is a foundation, and I know it's a dynamic plan, but it is important to start from a strong foundation so that you can make decisions from that. And I think that the questions that are being asked tonight certainly help with that, but I know that it's been a 3-year process, and I know that you're volunteers, and I want to say, the community appreciates all that you're doing, but the plan at any given iteration is like minutes old. And that's really scary for us as the public to hear that, like, you keep talking about it like this has been discussed for 3 years, but this thing that we saw tonight is now, it's now less than 2 hours old. So I think it's okay to take time and really get that foundation right, and if you have concerns about that, lean into that. That's okay. And I think, and ask those questions and get it right, because I do think it shapes decisions further down the line. And I do want to stress the importance of, I keep thinking of something that Mary Claire Edmond said at the last meeting, which was that she wanted parents to be the champion of this plan. And I want to be clear that I think that parents really want the board to be champions of our children's education. We want to be partners with you. And sometimes it feels really challenging to be your partner. I mean, tonight, I could not hear Perkins Eastman. I moved up, I still couldn't hear him. It was so hard. I mean, I'm so sort of fried because I've been trying so hard to hear it. There have been times I've made comments. I made comments on Post-it notes. I appreciate Adam Scobie brought up my concerns about safety issues at Pumpkin Delight. But I mean, it's so challenging to do this. I saw legitimate safety concerns. I brought it up, but I brought it up via Post-it notes. I'm trying very hard to listen. I think we need to do better if we're going to be partners with each other, because the reality is we're partners in a time of contraction for our kids, contraction of resources, and that's leading to consolidation. And my concern is, in that environment, that I don't think a 20-year plan is feasible. I think there are going to be times that you do not get the funding you want, and I don't want to see our kids permanently in portables. And an idealistic plan that has our kids in portables for 6 years doesn't feel that idealistic to me. It seems strange that this is both a pie-in-the-sky plan, and it also really is damaging to our children. I think we can do better, but I want to say that and say also that I really, really appreciate the hard work that has been done. I really feel that people have talked with me and heard me, and I really feel that you are doing such hard work, and like, honestly, some of you guys are asking questions that you're so many steps ahead of me at any given point. I'm amazed, and I'm really floored by the work that you're doing, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And again, I want to say, I do want to be your partner. I do want to help. If there's ways that I can do that I'm not thinking of, but I'm going to go to my PTA meeting and take the notes that I've taken tonight and share that there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Amanda Clark, 58 Canterbury Lane. You all heard my ideas. I have some like a la carte things. My first comment, Mr. Scobie's plan or idea, doing an elementary school and a middle school first on one side of town and then the other. I love that idea because it means those kids aren't double affected, none of them. Those kids that are in the elementary school that's being built, Live Oaks or JFK, then go to a new middle school on either side. There's no double effect, which is one of the things the parents care the most about, is not having their entire education be in a construction zone. My second comment, give Live Oaks and JFK parents the option of a waiver to go to a different elementary school during the construction process, because while it's idealistic to think that students would love being able to learn on a construction site and see that process, the fact is many students cannot concentrate in that sort of environment, and parents are then then have the option of at least not being on site if they know that's not a good environment for their kid that's maybe has sensory issues or other things that would make it harder for their personal experience in elementary school. My third comment, my last comment, don't close elementary schools until that funding is secure for that second elementary school on each side of town. Like if you close Calf Pen right away and then years pass before funding comes up to work on Orchard, those students are going to be in portables for a very long time, and that every 2-year cycle is going to have to be paid over and over again as we get to a point where that money is approved. Leave those schools open until that funding is in place so that the disruption doesn't have to happen ahead of time. Those are my 3 comments. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Neil Breisowitz, and I'm at 74 Overhill Road. Just want to talk about 3 quick things. I agree that having a plan that considers the facility index is important. I do. I also am really concerned about the equity of these 2 plans that are basically just the same plan. When you consider that the Board of Aldermen has to give us the funding every step of the way, the idea that we're going to have 2 new elementary schools and then have to wait for more funding, and then perhaps have 1 new middle school on one side and 1 new elementary school on the other, and then have to wait for funding. There's going to be a lot of students who are left out of the advantages of that beam raising ceremony, of being part of a new school. That's why I think that having a middle school first, like Mr. Scobie's plan, is really important for our community, our town. I understand that the elementary schools really need a lot of work, and that it should be a priority. But there's no way to get equity in this town if we start with elementary schools. It's just not going to happen for over 15 years. The other thing I want to have considered is the security considerations about the remote schools, not the trailers, what are they called? Portables, sorry. Security concerns about the portables. You know, we've spent tons of money securing our schools, building out these amazing doors that are impossible for our kids to open, and now we're going to put the kids for 6 years, if we're lucky, in portables, and we really need to consider the safety of our students for those times that they're in the portables. Those are my 3 things that I would like to have you guys consider. Thank you very much.
Come on.
Thanks. Brad Richards, thanks for having me. Pearson Ave. I have 2 kids at Orchard Hills Elementary School, and I think first, just looking at the plans, realizing that, like, I think for me, likely my kids would be out of school by the time any of these were done is actually helpful to see. And I think also just speaking from some personal experience, having worked for the government, this is really a strategic planning process. A lot of the details that have to be decided get worked out. They have to get worked out later. It's just impossible to plan for everything until you actually start doing the work. Just having been through it myself numerous times, I've never done school redistricting, but there's just so many pieces that, you know, you're doing your best, and I just want to say I appreciate all the diligence that's gone into this process already. It's never going to be perfect. You're going to have to make difficult decisions, and you know, personally, I was very excited about a single high school. I'm not convinced that there wasn't land available, but I understand you're going to have to compromise. We all have to compromise. We're not going to get what we want. And so making some decision is necessary. I think we all know that our schools are pretty old. We just got AC in some of the rooms at Orchard Hills recently. Very excited. My kids were very excited about that. And looking at the cost projections moving forward, if we do nothing, the costs are going to go up. It's going to be expensive to maintain our schools as is. It's not really a feasible option. Something has to be done. I'm not saying this is the perfect plan, but it's a reasonable plan, and I think, you know, thinking about our community. I've lived here now for 10 years. Our community, for me, is based around our school, but change has to happen, and I think our community can change. Our community is more than just our schools. It's the people that we live near. It's the people we see, downtown here. And so I think, change has to happen, and you're going to have to make some difficult decisions. And I just want to encourage you to be thoughtful about it. Realize this is going to have to come up again because it just has to. Can't be the final version, even if this is the next step in the process. So thank you very much.
Could we just get your address one more time, Mr. Richard?
7 Pearson Avenue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Stephen Ringwald, 133 Meadowside Road. I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of the information. I'm trying to catch up on the milforded.org. I understand this has been a lot of your time over the past few years. I don't understand all the elements, but it also feels, listening tonight, that maybe we all don't have a clear picture of how this works. And so it feels as though if it's voted on tonight, yes, that we kind of have to take the football and run for like the next 20 years and make this happen, because we don't want to redistrict more than once. And once we've done that and we make it a conclusion that we have to close 2 elementary schools, it kind of sets wheels in motion that things have to happen, that we can't guarantee we'll have the budget for. And I'm trying to know all the details, and I couldn't possibly. It's obviously a lot more than just one person can get in one meeting. But it feels as though we're not quite there yet. So I guess I'm maybe just echoing what some other people have already said, but it feels as though, yes, obviously broad strokes, it's a blueprint, but it feels as though voting yes on this now is kind of forcing our hand. So just, I don't know, please be thoughtful in that, is this really ready to go forward? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Krista Masha. I live at 40 Wilbur Avenue. Thank you all for all the work you've put into this. We know it's hard, and we know you spend so many hours trying to understand these issues and the briefings and so forth, all while shouldering your professional lives and your family lives and all that. So we appreciate you, and thank you. I think we had some really rich conversations in the last sort of long-range planning public meeting, and we all really appreciated your time and the one-on-one time that we got sort of in the breakout conversations. I would just echo what some of the folks here have said tonight, that this plan, this feels like a vision and not like a plan. It feels a little unwieldy, trying to lay a pathway that will span 20 to 30 years, to what Ms. Flowers said earlier tonight. It's a real concern to me as well that we could see finishing a project and then not getting funding for the next, and then be looking at having children in sort of disrupted modular classroom setups for an indefinite period of time. And so I guess my recommendation or thought would be, like, can we make this plan more digestible? Could we potentially rein this in to the point where we're looking at 3 to 5 year plans, or even 5 to 10 year plans, without letting go of the idea that, like, this does need to be a holistic sort of remaking of the district's facilities, and that all of these facilities need to be touched in some way. But I also think it needs to be realistic and pragmatic, and it doesn't feel that way to me in my laywoman understanding. I also think it was exposed tonight that there are some real foundational issues that we just don't understand yet. Ms. Edmonds raised some really good questions about cost-benefit analysis around what does it cost to keep a school open versus having 5 trailers when we're still paying utilities on a school, and what are we looking at maybe having to pay back if we accelerate the construction of one project where we just touched that renovation 15 years ago. I mean, these are issues that shouldn't really be unpacked right now in the minutes before a vote is to happen. I know that the capital improvement recommendation is due to be, put forth by the end of the month. That being said, I would think it would make sense. I know you lose another cycle if you postpone to the next year, and that's very frustrating. But I do think it's important to get this right and be really realistic, because you are going to have to go before the mayor and the aldermen and put forth a plan that feels practicable. So I would just say, we understand that this needs to happen. It's just that I do think it needs to be grounded in realism and pragmatism, and I just don't get that sense. So that's all I would say. Again, thanks for your time. Thanks for everything. That's it.
Is there anybody else who'd like to make any public comment? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion, Ms. Doyle.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion. I move that the Milford Board of Education adopt the Long-Range Facilities Master Plan Scenario A as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Tedros is seconded. Okay, we can have board comment on the motion discussion. Mr. Scobie?
Still getting used to this. I just want to thank Perkins Eastman, Patrick and his team for all the work that they've been putting in for the last few months. Everyone on the board and all the work that we've been putting in for some of us years and some of us very tiring, 6 months now, 7 months. And I just want to address the fact that, and I'm sure we're all going to say something to this effect, and a few community members said this too, there's a lot of hard work and hard decisions that are coming along with this that we all kind of understand why we need to move forward with choosing how we're going to renovate or remodel our schools. And that I just want to acknowledge the fact that change is naturally just a scary thing. People immediately start thinking about the norms that are going to be kind of taken away, the standards that they're used to dissolving, rather than only focusing ahead on the outcome. And so I just want to kind of bring up the fact that change is scary. I'm not going to pretend it's not, but we also have to keep in mind what these nice new schools will end up meaning for us. And I think in order to get to that point, we all need to also understand that sacrifices need to be made. And that, in my mind, we need to figure out the best path forward to minimize the amount of sacrifices that us as parents and taxpayers and our kids will need to be making. I just want to throw out there that, we were all elected to represent the community, and there's no way ever to have the entire community agree with all of us. That would be wonderful, but that's realistically never going to happen. And this is where the hard decisions come into play, because sometimes, we've been diving in over this information for months or years, again, on Ms. Glenn and Ms. Doyle's side, I think Mr. Koba's, where sometimes these hard decisions will directly contradict what it seems the community wants. And I just want to kind of reiterate the fact that it's not easy, and we will always be trying to put the entirety of Milford ahead of us when we make our votes. Last thing I just want to throw out there too is I just want to thank the community. I mean, it is 10:40 and people are still slugging it out with us to give us their feedback on this. There's been a handful of events where people have come out and given us feedback and yelled at us and praised us and fought with us, and I just think all of that is absolutely necessary in a process like this, so I just want to thank the community.
Other comments from board members? Ms. Doyle?
Thank you, Mr. Scobie, for what you said. This is a hard decision. We have been talking about each day. When we first started this conversation a few years ago, we had a conversation at some point about bringing in a consultant earlier into the process to provide a few plans that we could provide. And my comment in response back to that is, we are the experts of the Milford Board of Education and Milford Public Schools. We sit here multiple times a month and go through policies and look at spreadsheets and do those things and go to extra meetings and really spend the time digesting the information. There's a lot of information. There's a huge learning curve, so I understand the position that our new board members, having come onto the board recently and to be thrown into this process, it's not an easy decision. It's a lot of information, from understanding what the capital improvement plan is, what the long-term is, how long things take, what are reimbursement rates, what are the realities of schools, what are our programmatic deficiencies across the district. And at this moment, our schools are not equitable. There are differences between the elementary schools, the middle schools, and the high schools. And so to me, the dream is that we do have 6 equitable elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and high schools in the future, and that every child has the same opportunities. And if you've grown up in Milford, you know that that was not always the case, that there were conversations about which school is which and which school is better. And so to me, our directive and my directive and what I approach any of these conversations from is, how can we provide for Milford for the future? And how do we best prepare these children to live in the world that we cannot anticipate? We can't anticipate what AI is going to do. Is there going to be an entire AI revolution that basically puts us back to writing with pencils and pens? Potentially. But we still have to remember the skills that we need to teach our students: reading, writing, math, and how to live in a society. And so the buildings just support that idea, and the community is built amongst that. So I think this is an aspirational plan that we're going to start somewhere. We have to start somewhere. There is no perfect solution, and I have trust, and I hope in our elected community, as well as our residents, that they'll come out and make their opinions known at each step of this as we go through for the next 5 every year as we reapproach this plan. So I will be voting yes on this motion and look forward to the ongoing discussions for as long as I live in Milford, because having sat in this seat, I have opinions. And even if I'm not on the board, I still plan on being involved. So thank you.
Other comments from board members? Ms. Edmonds?
So earlier today, someone asked me if I felt nervous that there would be angry parents showing up to do public comment tonight. And I feel exactly the opposite. I feel like what I've seen over the last couple of months are parents who are advocating for their kids. I feel like they are parents who want to see that the board is advocating for our kids. And when I look at the plan that's before us, I don't think that this is the plan that is doing the best possible thing for our kids. I think we can do better, and I think that 4 years straight of disruption with limited play space outside, I think we can do better for our kids. I think we can do better than portables for years on end without guarantee of funding. And I think that we can do better for our kids than prioritizing buildings that were touched 9 years ago than buildings that haven't been touched in 20 years. And so for that reason, I will be voting no.
Thank you. Other comments? Ms. Flowers?
This is probably one of the hardest decisions because it impacts so many families in Milford. And none of us have a crystal ball. We have no idea ultimately after the first project when the next project is going to be. And that's scary because I also don't want children to be in modulars, although arguably better than some of our buildings. You know, I think it's interesting when you think about it. I had this whole thing written out that I was going to read because that's how I do things best. But as I was thinking of timing, it was like the last school that our community saw opened in 1973. And those freshmen are now 67 years old. And that's just kind of mind-blowing to me that the town that we live in hasn't prioritized building new schools for so long. And that makes me sad, because had this have started 5 years ago, we would be celebrating a new school now. I hear what all of my fellow board members are saying, those in support and against. And ultimately, I just think we have to start. I don't think there is a plan that is going to make everyone happy. We received an email this evening saying, please don't start at the middle schools. So how do we make everyone happy? I can't. And if we don't start, and if we delay the CIP for another year, there is just no guarantee this is ever going to get off the ground. So I will be voting yes, because to me, we just have to start. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flowers. Ms. Brown?
I just want to echo what Ms. Flowers said. I've lived in Milford my entire life. When I walk into the schools, they look exactly the same as when I attended them. I went to Simon Lake. I went to Jonathan Lowe. There was no middle school when I went. It was a K through 8 school, as I aged myself. But, you know, my son, I somewhat felt disappointed too that there wouldn't be the one high school. I sort of got excited. I thought, oh, maybe my son will have a new school. He will not have a new school, which, you know, is disappointing, but I understand. But it's not just about my son. It's about the kids that haven't been born yet. It's about the kids 5 years from now, 10 years from now. I just cannot see myself passing this off. It has to start somewhere. If someone had started this years ago, if someone had just been brave enough to do it, we would be in a different position right now. We wouldn't have schools that are sold. We wouldn't be in a position where something needed to be replaced and we just didn't know it was going to happen overnight. I mean, we should never have waited this long. And so I agree with Nicole that there's going to be no plan that makes everybody happy. I mean, somebody's going to be upset. If you had been a high school parent and we told you that, you know, your kid, the last year, their high school year, they were going to have to go to a swing space, they'd be here. And I'd understand that too. They'd be upset that their last year of high school, they've done 12 years of an education, and their last year, they wouldn't even be doing it in their high school. Somebody is going to be upset and bothered, and I get it. It's not that I don't understand or don't sympathize, but we really do have to just get started. And I know it stinks. I wish I could say to you that I could wave a magic wand or I won the lotto and I could just help you build these schools without relying on someone else. But if we don't start now, then we could be looking at these schools looking the way they look another 10 years from now. I mean, like, election year comes up, we could all be off this board and someone else is on, and they're just not gonna do it. And we still have old schools, and we never get started. We'll be exactly where we were years ago. So I will be voting yes tonight.
I'll echo a little bit of what Ms. Doyle said early. Before I was even on the board, the summer I decided to run for the board, I went to that meeting at Law where they went over the enrollment projections. That was basically the beginning of this. And I've been looking at data, endless streams of data ever since then. And I think, you know, we've worked with a lot of, you know, demographers, the architecture firm we're working with now, the Bureau Veritas that did the facilities assessments. We have a lot of data. And also, but we have to make the final decision. We have to take all that data and try to figure it out. And this isn't an easy decision, like everybody said, but I think the path that we got here on was really enriching. I mean, we had a huge amount of community involvement. Snowy days on Saturdays and the sessions we just had, and I think the engagement of the community has been really helpful to us because we want to hear what you have to say, and we're listening best we can. That being said, I'm planning on voting yes on scenario A because I think, like it's been echoed everywhere else, we need to start somewhere. We can't guarantee the funding. We can't guarantee anything. We're just going to put this plan forth, and we need to get something in place. We can't delay another year. We've been delaying and delaying and delaying. And when it goes through, if it ever gets to bonding, then we'll know where we can start at least. And we'll be revisiting it every year. The 5-year plan changes every year. And when it comes to portables and school closures, we're going to have to look at us or whoever's on the board at the time is going to need to look at every step along the way, replan, and recycle as needed. Each one of these buildings is going to be a separate project that's going to be managed. And I think it's important to get something going and be successful at it so everybody sees, wow, we got a brand new school. Gets everybody happy, gets everybody moving. So I just want to, just a thank you to everybody that's given us feedback, a thank you to everybody on the board and the administrative staff and everybody else. But it's been a long road, and I think we just need to get moving, and then we need to monitor it and update it going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Koba. Other comment? Okay, I just want to echo what many of my fellow board members have said. You know, we brought our consultants on board as experts in the field, and, you know, we tasked them specifically with helping us get from point A to point B. And actually this plan with some tweaks was, that were offered by a member of the community to address some concerns was presented first several weeks ago. It was not presented first tonight. And I do believe it is a strong foundation. I appreciated Mr. Richards' comments that you know, details will always need to be worked out later. And I understand that might not be comforting to some, but that is the reality. You know, we have to look at the big picture. We have to look at the needs of the whole district. And I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that, you know, we don't have another $2 million budget reduction over the course of the next several years, which, you know, would force us to close the school before we're ready to close the school. And, you know, there are, I'll say it, there's members of the Board of Aldermen that would want us to close schools in September. And that's a really scary thought, because I know the disruption that causes, and we intentionally have been trying to move forward with something that will show that we're doing this in good faith, but I believe that it is a plan that will move the district forward in a way that honors the kids. And as others have said, it's incumbent upon those in these seats at that time, as a project comes up, to be steadfast in their commitment to a smooth transition. And as I said earlier, we have the best teachers in the world, and this is what they do best. They do best building relationships with kids. They do best helping kids work through their worries. And relationship building is a cornerstone of the district. And I think that plays a very large role in something like this, when you're having, when you're looking at change. Because as was said, change is not easy for some. It's very easy for some, it's harder for others. So I think, with that said, we need to start. We need a starting point, and I, in good conscience, cannot wait another year to get something moving forward. And, you know, I have to have faith that our city leaders will understand what we've attempted to do. And we're just going to have to advocate really hard to get the funding that we need to move forward with these projects. So with that, I will ask for a vote. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Can we have a roll call, please, Ms. Fleming?
Yes. Okay. Megan Doyle?
Yes.
Jennifer Brown? Yes. Mary Claire Edmonds?
No.
Nicole Flowers?
Yes.
Tom Koba?
Yes.
Adam Scobie?
Nay.
Hannah Tedros?
Yes.
Nicole Wilhelm?
Yes.
Susan Glennon?
Yes.
Okay, that's 7 votes for yes, 2 votes for no.
Okay, 7 yes, 2 no, so the motion does pass. All right, thank you, board members. Again, as I said earlier, thank you very much for your commitment to this. We have a couple more items on the agenda, just quick items. Ms. Doyle, consent agenda.
I make a motion for the board to approve the following minutes: April 13th, 2026 business meeting, the April 20th, 2026 special meeting, the April 27th, 2026 committee of the whole, to approve the minutes as written.
Second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Tedros. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have board comment. Any board comment this evening? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 10:56.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Anybody opposed to adjourning? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.